All right, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to change up the style and the format a little bit. Instead of the me on the offensive going at people asking for debate, I think we've reached the point where, for the most part, there's not really serious contenders. And if there are going to be serious contender debates, it needs to be more of a formal, professional type of a setting where we have a moderator and that kind of stuff. I mean, not that I'm opposed to the blood sports style if it's a big name person, but I think we've kind of reached the point where every time I open it up for this kind of a discussion, it's not really debates anymore. It just ends up being people coming with questions and topics and issues. So we're going to maybe switch the format and see how it goes with just kind of letting people come and chat. If you want to try to convince me of something, you're welcome to do that. You can make your arguments if you want. If somebody does want to debate, that's still on the table. I don't really care. I just think that it's kind of at the point where it's counterproductive to always frame this as the open debate, because it just doesn't really make any sense anymore. And we've already beaten the final boss, so there's no point really trying to debate every single day any random person. It does make for some entertaining times, and I feel like we'll still get some entertaining stuff even if we just have it in this style or this format. So, but I want to also expand the topics beyond the same old stuff. If you want to ask your catechumen questions, you can, but I also want to open it up to talking about World War II history. We can talk about Tiny Mustache Man. We could talk about the topics of Zionism, the history of the nation state of Israel. We could talk about Judaism and the Talmud. All of that is on the table. We can talk politics in general. I want to broaden the scope of what we talk about because it's kind of pigeonholed into always being the same kind of catechumen questions. There's a lot of other things going on in the world, and with men especially, I notice a lot of men have struggles and issues that they don't see addressed anywhere else. And a lot of the talking heads don't really have good answers. And one of the things that I do think is great about Orthodoxy is that when, like the first crop of converts back in 2017 that were from Discord, like all those guys that I'm pretty close to, even to this day, like they're all married with kids now. Some of them are becoming priests, some of them are becoming deacons, etc. And that's a good testament, I think, to the actual transformative power that Orthodoxy has in terms of actually healing people versus just sort of like go to the gym, find a girl, like all that stuff's important, but those are kind of side issues to if you seek first the kingdom, all those things will be added to you, right? So, but I do want to talk about anything related to men's issues, men's struggles as well, broaden the topic to that stuff. I want to talk about politics. If you want to talk about MAGA, I mean, I kind of think politics is funny and goofy, but I'm happy to talk about it. It's somewhat interesting, I guess. But if people want to bring up political issues, people want to bring up Russia issues, Israel, Iran, Israel, Syria, Israel, whatever issues, Gaza issues, it's all on the table, um, just to kind of broaden the scope. By the way, we could talk about movies and occult symbolism, esoterica as well. I just want to talk about more stuff than the same old topics that always get brought up. And so if you want to come on, just hit request to speak and I'll bring you up. We can discuss anything. If you do have catechumen questions, that's fine. If you want to talk about women, if you're a dude and you want to lament issues, you want to talk about your relationship issues. This is another thing that's getting really popular now is like guys that just talk to other guys about their girl problems, which is interesting. I've never really thought about talking about that, but it would be a new interesting topic. Oki, what's up, man? You got to unmute.
Yeah, hello, Jay. Can you hear
Hey,
me?
what's on your mind?
I have a question. My philosophy professor assigned me a task to write a paper about philosophy of science and the scientific
Yeah.
method. And I know you talked a lot about this in the past, and I heard also Father Deacon talk about this. So I want to really have a holistic approach to this, from an Orthodox perspective, of course. So, what are some resources you would recommend? Like, do you have any lectures on it or books you would recommend, papers, whatever, just so I can make this really good and have my research be complete, kind of?
Actually, yes, Father Deacon, Dr. Ananias, and I did an entire podcast maybe a year ago on the topic of philosophy of science, and it's a really good chat. It was maybe like an hour and a half long, but he recommends the book by Chalmers, Chalmers. What is this thing called science? So I would say check out that podcast. I think if you just type in on YouTube something like Dyer, uh, philosophy of science, Ananias or Deacon Ananias, it'll probably come up. But uh, that's where I would start. Good, great question. Ash, what's up? Get unmute. Ash, you have to unmute.
Hello? Sorry about that. My mic
No problem.
my mic was not muted, but I could see that it was muted here. So, appreciate you allowing me to speak today. I've My husband and I have found ourselves kind of in a little pickle here as far as where we think we belong when it comes to the church. Uh, in our early Christian days, we became staunchly Reformed Christians. Now we're Anglicans. And there's been a question of strict penal substitution and that kind of thing, like C.S. Lewis did back in the day. So basically, I don't really know any catechism questions at the moment. We're still learning together, but we have been getting quite intrigued with orthodoxy. Um, but there's a little struggle session here between, total depravity and irresistible grace and all of that in contrast with orthodoxy thinking. I was just wanting to see your thoughts on uh, how we can deal with this kind of thing. What are some good resources that we can go to that would help address these little struggle sessions that we have with Calvinistic thinking versus orthodoxy?
Yeah, I have a two-part series on my Clips channel, J Dyer Live Streams and Absurdities. It's a two-part critique of Calvinism and Tulip. So that's probably the best thing. I would say watch that total full discussion. I also have a discussion with Dr. David Patrick Harry. His channel is Church of the Eternal Logos. We did about a 2 hour critique of Calvinism. So I would say check those two things out. But if you're looking for a specific book, I would say if you read St. Cyril of Alexandria and the Christological Controversy, you'll see that the Christology that comes out of the councils, particularly Ephesus, is incompatible with anything to do with Calvinism. And so what happens is Calvinism forces you into the idea of Jesus basically meriting created grace to achieve a legal status for all of those who have notional faith in him. And ultimately, yes, that's the elect and so forth in Calvinism. But what happens is Calvinism destroys Orthodox Christology. And once Christology gets kind of settled and that becomes your starting point for your order of theology or your ordo theologiae, then all of those kind of issues about grace, etc., they become reconciled because you realize that human nature can never lose its natural will and energy. And in Calvinism, it loses that. So human nature is not really human nature anymore because it doesn't have its own will and energy. And so grace is always a synergy with the natural human will and energy. So nature is raised by the supernature of God's uncreated grace. And you don't get that in Calvinism. You get a monothelitism or a monoenergism where the divine will and the divine energy replaces, supplants, and controls the human will and energy, which is monothelite Christology. So Christology is ultimately the answer to solving that. And I would read John McGuckin's book, St. Cyril of Alexandria, The Christological Controversy. David, what's up?
Hi, Jay. What do you think Israel is trying to pursue? What's the end goal?
Oh, we know what it is. It's the Greater Israel Project. And if you go back to the Oded Yanon strategy, he was the the strategist underneath, I think, Ariel Sharon, and they had this plan to basically remake all the surrounding states around Israel. So Iran, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, all of, all of those countries had a specific plan that Israel wanted, Lebanon as well, that Israel wanted to achieve with them. And if you read the original Oded Yanon plan, some of that has been achieved. And then if you read the Likud plan back in the 1990s, when Netanyahu was kind of first getting into political prowess, the Likud plan is also kind of an updated version of that. And a lot of those objectives have been achieved as well, particularly with Iraq and places like that. So that you can see very clearly when you read the Oded Yanon, the Greater Israel Project, when you read the Likud strategy, that we're doing pretty much whatever Israel wants in the Middle East. And there's only a couple countries where it hasn't totally been achieved, like with Iran. So that's a huge explainer. It has a lot of
Right.
explanatory power in terms of understanding what Israel's objectives are in the Middle East. But
Mhm.
I think they definitely want total, regional hegemony and control. And of course, they obviously rely largely on the influence that they have in the U.S.
Right.
Political sphere through APAC and the donors and so forth.
Right. Yeah, and it's clear, it's evident in the new historian movement. You have people like Benny Morris, Ilan Pappé, Avi Schleim. These people clearly, right, talk about this. And another follow-up question I want to ask is, do you think there's something theological? Like, are they waiting for the Antichrist?
I think there's probably a significant contingent within Israel that is serious about, rebuilding the temple. They have the temple project and all that. They may not be a majority of people. I think probably the majority of people are secular, but yeah, there would be some group, some amount of minority, rabbinical people that believe that they're going to bring in the Messiah. You can even go back to Moses Hess in his book. He talks like this will produce the Mashiach, even though he was like a secular utopian. He was the father of secular utopianism. They still seem to think, for whatever reason, that when they rebuild the temple or whatever, that it's going to bring some kind of secular Messiah, or they believe that it's the people of Israel themselves that are the saviors of the world, because, like, it has this conception, socialism would come to the world out of a nation state of Israel. So it's still a messianic view, even if they don't believe in an actual Messiah. They think it's the nation state of Israel itself, or the Jewish people themselves are the savior of the world, which is crazy. And yeah, I think ultimately, I don't know if this is the end of the world, but their conception, as Jesus says in John 5, he says, "If another comes in his own name, him you will believe." And the church fathers have always interpreted that as some form of a antichrist figure.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. Shmev, what's up? You gotta, Shmev, you have to unmute.
Hey, can you hear me? uh,
Yeah.
First, will you be selling Esoteric 3 at the Florida conference?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to see us go full Handmaid's Tale. In all seriousness, I'd like to see a public dress code. I think women should not be voting, and I think we should ban pornography. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I don't know if we're ever going to get to those ideals, but I mean, there used to be public dress codes, so it does seem reasonable. I don't think we want to go full Taliban, but I agree with you.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about how realistic it is to, think about changing the laws anytime soon, but I would imagine down the road, if we have some sort of a Christian future in America, which it sounds kind of crazy, but actually, what some of the global elite actually warn about this. If you read Jacques Attali, he talks about the danger of, uh, you know, authentic Christianity making a return, and that America could potentially turn to Christianity, which would be a problem for the global technocratic elite, he says in that book in 2006. So there is a possibility of this, even from the elite perspective. But I think that's down the road. I mean, I think it doesn't bother me that people have these conversations, these discussions, and I think ultimately, though, we got to get away from even the idea that voting even matters, except on maybe a local level. I think voting really only made sense when you had kind of small conclave tribal type settings. Outside of that, voting is utterly retarded. The whole system is retarded. It doesn't make any sense.
Agreed.
And people need to start. I mean, I think you're thinking outside the box, and I think you're right to think outside the box. But I think people are not thinking outside the box when they think, what sort of democratic change can we make to make things better? When we have to start thinking, no, actually, the whole system of democracy is the problem, in part. Efrey Jepstein, what's up? But this is fun to get into the new political sphere topics. Efrey Jepstein, what's up?
Hey Jay, I have two questions. One is regarding a fallacious argument, and then the other one is regarding the tag. Is that cool?
Sure.
So I was texting my friend the other day about presuppositional arguments, and then he asked me, or not asked me, he proposed that like because the existence of God has so many arguments, that in and of itself is a good argument that it is legitimate. But I know that that's fallacious. I just don't know why. So I was wondering if you could enlighten me.
That's an interesting one. Um, yeah, it is a fallacy. I have to think about which one it is, because just because there's a bunch of versions of something doesn't mean that it's good. I mean, you could have a bunch of arguments for something and the arguments all be bad. So
Right.
it's a good question. I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head which one it is, but it definitely seems and feels fallacious. So if FDA was in here, you'd probably identify right away what the specific fallacy is.
Yeah, because he texted me about this like 2 days ago, and I still haven't responded because I just don't know enough about this stuff. But basically,
Well, let's ask FDA when he comes in here, if he comes in, because he probably has a good answer.
okay, cool. Yeah, because his argument was like, or he coined it the meta argument, which is uh, if you combine all of the arguments, then that in and of itself is the argument. And I'm just like, I don't think that makes any sense. But
Yeah, a lot of those arguments are mutually exclusive too. Like tag doesn't really work with you know, anti-tag arguments. So
okay. Well, so that leads into my second question, which is that I'm still so I watched Dr. Bo Branson's course or not course a lecture on monarchical Trinitarianism, and a lot of it was really tough for me to understand. But one thing that I still can't bridge the gap between how the tag proves monarchical Trinitarianism in particular. I still can't understand that.
well, I don't know that there's anything about tag that necessarily directly will show you monarchical Trinitarianism. It's more of an indirect necessary implication, because if tag is true, it requires a kind of metaphysic, and it requires a kind of world that only Orthodox Christianity really posits. So if you watch my talk that I did about phaser and universals, if you type in J. Dyer, Dr. Ed Phaser, universals, that whole talk is about how we get from tag to Trinity. And the only Trinity doctrine that exists is the monarchical model. The other models are just made up Latin later errors. So there is no other Trinitarian view. But uh, thank you for that question. I appreciate that. Dogface, what's up? We'll ask the FDA when he comes back in here. You want to unmute? Dogface, you want to unmute?
Yeah, sorry, Jay. Thanks
It's
for
all good. What's up, man?
Hey, I was just looking through. So this is off topic, but kind of on topic sometimes. I was looking through different scriptures and trying to find the right translation in English. I was wondering if you had one that you would recommend.
I mean, the Orthodox Church has an Orthodox Study Bible, which is really good, and it uses the New King James uh, translation. So that's kind of our standard. But I mean, there's other things that are useful too. There is a translation of the Septuagint, I think, that's out or about to be out in English. But the Orthodox Church tends to prefer the received text for the New Testament. So the King James will be fine for the most part. Um, Fox, what's up?
Hello.
Yeah, what's up, dude?
I kind of had a black pill take about the response that you got from like pro Ukraine right Twitter, that kind of crowd, Spencer crowd in regards to Tiny Mustache Man.
Okay.
I kind of think that in the same way communists can't be debated with on the grounds of truth, and logic because they don't share a sort of
Right.
Socratic or Platonic, like epistemology that the old world did, like the Christian world did, in the same way that these people who are very, Nietzschean, fundamentally, even though a lot of them don't, haven't actually read Twilight of the Idols or Genealogy of Morals, like they share Nietzsche's hostility to Socrates, and
Right.
in some way, almost overlap with, without knowing it, the pre-Socratics in this weird sort of like where there is no truth and everything's a tool to further one's impulses.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit on a key issue as to why you can't really get anywhere in that kind of a discussion or debate with these people. I think you spot on. That's kind of what I was getting at when I said yesterday that a lot of the right wingers who came to argue and debate sounded like postmodernists because Nietzsche is kind of he's a figure in postmodernism.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, is that there is a weird conglomerate right because we kind of share some social conservative issues, but fundamentally Christians, I mean, even if you're Protestant or Catholic or Orthodox, are so foreign to this, you know, far right, the types that you kind of see, because they fundamentally, anti-Russia kind of types tend to just not have a much problem with Freemasonry or these kind of things, so long as a certain ethnic group is remains as an elite. It's much closer in some ways to the left from a philosophical ground. So I think,
That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think this is a key insight that, and even people who are supposedly on the right who don't even know these philosophical topics. Like, I think the zeitgeist of our era, especially with meme culture and all that, and I'm not like necessarily having a problem with. I think memes are great; they're funny. But one of the things that's interesting is that whole meme culture, for example, some of the guys that called in yesterday, like they were saying, we don't actually care about the history of
mm,
Hitler and World War II because the meme is now divorced from the history.
yeah,
It takes on a life of its own. And so that whole idea of like crafting and meaning making and importing your own meaning is like deconstructionist, postmodernist, and it's power oppressor narratives, and that's exactly the left's attitude about political
mm,
discourse. It's all about power dynamics, and the Nietzschean right does the exact same thing.
yeah. I mean, fundamentally, I think it's just a huge, black pill in the sense that, well, I guess it's kind of a white pill too. That theology comes first. You can't ever put some social issue, like, oh, well, we both oppose, Skittle stuff. It's like you're kind of putting the cart before the horse, and the whole thing collapses. So I don't know if I'm just blackpilling, but I feel like making those conglomerate alliances without first considering those kind of first principles like leads to
I think
this.
you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Yeah, like the presuppositional first principles issue is exactly the root of the difference, and it's the same with a lot of the right wing political sphere. The Groypers is like they do the same thing, where it's like a lot of their arguments were, who cares about the theology if we have the same degeneracy stance? Well, but do we actually have an anti degeneracy stance? And on the basis of what? James was I mean, that's why a lot of them think that means this is why a lot of these people think that they're on the same page with Mormons and Muslims. Oh, let's have a giant right wing coalition because on the books, Mormons and Muslims are anti-gay. So I guess we all have the same worldview. It's just crazy. They didn't even realize that Mormonism was a sex cult. Islam is a sex cult too. It's so stupid. Uh, James, what's up? I'm mute.
Hey, how's it going, boss? Kind of keeping what you've been saying as well. Within the last couple weeks, actually, kind of like our friend was saying before, I haven't become black pilled, but I made a post about it. As I've definitely become ortho pilled and having like recently like getting a little bit back into you and Andrew Wilson and stuff and focusing more geopolitically as well. I'm kind of just asking like, besides building up like power levels and everything, what's kind of people within my generation around the age of like 24 and stuff, kind of things that we should maybe perhaps kind of be focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what are some of the things that you would shift your focus on? Like, so like not as much politics and more about like self improvement. Like, what do you mean?
In the sense that I was, for lack of a better term, like not a groiper and everything, but I kind of fell within the phase of like this technocratic kind of right and everything, and I kind of saw that they're just doing things that the left is doing that's more kind of like it's exactly the same thing, just with a different aesthetic. So now I want to like kind of more focus like on self improvement, obviously going and connecting with like the Orthodox Church and everything as well.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I suppose it's just like I'm asking like what would you have done, I suppose, if you were like around my age and kind of within the same sphere, kind of just things I should kind of be aware of.
Are you like mid 20s, early 20s? Is that
Yeah,
what
I'm
you
like
said?
24 right now. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a great question. If I was to go back, I mean, I granted, I understand that like I was in my 20s in the 2000s, so I understand that the 2020s are a lot different than the 2000s. But some of the things that I think don't matter in terms of decade is if I could go back in my 20s, I wouldn't worry about college and higher education in the sense of like trying to get some kind of humanities degree or philosophy degree. I think that it's a very rare case nowadays as to where, if you were in some private school, that would actually be beneficial. I would have focused on starting my own business, being an entrepreneur. I would have focused on trying to write a book earlier than I did. I had a lot of hangups and things in my head that made me think, "Oh, I can't write a book. I could never do that. Oh, that'll never happen." And a lot of that was just in my head, and I was kind of my own worst enemy. So I would say young guys should start thinking more about that, and that doesn't mean you're immediately going to do it. I'm saying that you start to plan for that. So throughout your 20s, you should channel that energy into transforming yourself and getting established, and it is still possible to do it. I know that the economy sucks and everything's crazy, but um, I would say that try to focus on those things. And obviously, like God comes first, and then rather than trying to immediately. I mean, I'm not saying you gotta be like a millionaire entrepreneur finance bro before you can get married or whatever, but I would say as you begin to transform yourself, you can also learn to talk to women because a lot of the young guys are so nerdy that they don't know what they're doing. So I would actually say learn some social dynamics, learn some, um, go practice this kind of stuff because that's going to benefit you, not just in terms of a girl, but like having communication skills, being able to explain your ideas, being able to, disagree, have a debate. They're not the most important things, but they do matter and they can be useful. So all those kind of skills, I would say, are very beneficial. And also, um, if you have retarded friends, don't worry about leaving your retarded friends because a lot of your retarded friends are going to bring you down. When you're in your 20s, you're really interested in even still, I think, like what your friends think and Oh, all my friends are going out to partying tonight, dude. Just screw all of them. Focus on yourself. You can become a loner for a while. I was a loner in my 20s, but what it allowed me to do was read hundreds and hundreds of books, which is invaluable now. So you can do that in your 20s. You don't have to immediately worry about solving every problem by age 25. Take that time to work on yourself and get established, and then you're going to be doing good. Michael, what's up? Michal? Yeah, what's up?
From Czech Republic, Europe. Jay, I have a question regarding hippie Jesus. Where is it coming from? Are there some books which I can buy and read on this topic? Because I have some friends which are also Orthodox, but I have strong hippie Jesus vibes from them, and I want to have some arguments for this.
I think probably my first inclination would be that it comes out of portrayals of Marxists and socialists, probably.
Uh-huh.
And then more recently, the 1960s and 70s Jesus People movement. So that's what spawned megachurches. A lot of the charismatic churches that exist today come out of that. Calvary Chapel comes out of the Jesus People movement of the
Okay.
60s and 70s. And a lot of the people involved in that are people like Chuck Smith, Lonnie Frisbee, et cetera. A lot of them had CIA connections and come out of the CIA and come out of the Vietnam War in terms of Black Ops, Green Beret, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, there is a possibility that some of that was constructed and concocted. There's not like direct evidence. It's just a suspicious sort of origin. But I would say, but I don't know one book on the
Mhm.
Jesus people, but there's a movie on it. You can watch a movie that came out pretty recently that was popular called The Jesus Revolution.
Okay.
And that's actually about all of that movement. And I would say in America, that's probably the biggest contributor to that idea because it was all those hippies that were converting to evangelicalism, getting baptized out in California in the ocean. And they were reading Hal Lindsey's like Great Planet Earth book and this kind of stuff. And then they kind of, I think, just brought into Christianity their evangelicalism, the idea that like, oh, dude, like we were hippies or whatever, but like Jesus is like the ultimate hippie, bro. Drago, what's up, man?
Hey Jay, how are you doing? I've been thinking more recently about how well we had the Charlie Kirk situation, we had the arena train situation, and how there's, let's say, for like the citizens, the good citizens, if we could call it that, there's like the righteous anger that would ebb and flow when these things happen, but the citizen typically is more concerned with, they have a job, they have a family to take care of, right? They're not actually going to exercise that anger right now because jobs are there to keep things in check. Whereas usually the riffraff we see is from people who don't have jobs, who are not really going anywhere in life per se. They don't have family, they don't have responsibility. But then as I look at, the impending, AI, post AI world where in many respects, jobs will go away. I mean, there may be some jobs, but I think that would remove the buffer that's been holding back a lot of this latent violent energy or anger. And it just seems inevitable that there would be a surge in that kind of case, that release of anger in society that's been pent up because, jobs have been keeping people busy, let's say. But if these people don't have jobs anymore, now we have more conflict. So I'm just curious how that vibes with how you would think about things and what you think about that.
I'm sorry, it's somebody was talking to me for part of that. I heard most of it. Your question was if there's a collapse economically speaking and there's less jobs, is that going to contribute to the racial violence? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not specifically racial violence. I suppose that could be part of it, but I guess right now, let's say the left wing is the agitator of violence. The right wing is, generally speaking, pretty tame because jobs, the responsible let's say people have jobs, have family, but when they don't have jobs anymore,
Yeah.
right? Is that going to lead to a big counter reaction? And then what do you?
Oh, absolutely. I bet I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I mean, obviously I don't know, but I think we've all been kind of thinking that the what's in the cards is some kind of engineered race war, or some sort of an engineered situation of a economic collapse, and both of those two together would be very potent. It would also allow them to roll out some kind of UBI or some sort of like, credit based technocratic system, which is what Bertrand Russell wrote about 100 years ago, that said that they would do. So that would be a perfect scenario for that. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, and with those credit systems, I mean, is it inevitably a slide into communism, or is there still some alternative system that isn't necessarily communistic that could, be the equilibrium that we go into?
I think they absolutely want a type of socialism like that, a technocratic socialism, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're necessarily going to have it successfully. I mean, they might try it and it might be a giant failure. I mean, not everything. I don't think socialism ever works, but I think a lot of these people believe that they can have a utilitarian technocratic socialism that also has elements of capitalism. So you can have a system that's kind of a third way, which is a lot of the ideologues kind of have that idea, like Keynesians. So if you had a Keynesian technocratic system, that's I think what they want, and they think that will be the best solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, on a related note, if we were to say, in a very general term, that the big battle of good and evil throughout history has been, let's say, a battle of theosis versus gnosis, in some sense, right? So becoming like God through, the external through God giving us grace versus through my own natural means because I'm divinely illuminated from within and all that. Well, it seems like with AI, yeah, maybe it's going to accelerate this path to the gnosis, this antithetical path. So even I would say, like, even now, if you use AI, like the way AI interacts with you is different than the way it interacts with me. It kind of, if you just look at other people's GPT conversations and your own, it starts to morph towards you, right? And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it really feels like, in some sense, the AI is becoming an extension of me to present as a mere reflection the godlike version of Drago. It's the omniscient Drago where, I asked a question.
That's exactly what we said on a podcast the other
Oh,
day.
really?
Is that it's intended to be it's intended to be like the ideal version of you, so you can have your own little personal deity.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I guess it makes sense you would have talked about that then. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts, but sounds like you're well into that. So
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I think you're spot on. Yeah, and I think they intentionally made it a mirror mode like that because they know human psychology. Everybody's going to want a narcissistic confirmation bias
yeah,
machine that will make them feel good. And there was a really good version of this in some hippie chick that was I can't find the clips, but she was posting all of her stuff on Instagram about how uh, basically ChatGPT was like confirming that she was a goddess, and she was having conversations so deep that like no one else in the world was having this conversation. It was so stupid, but it was obviously like a ChatGPT fueled delusion. That's a perfect example. There's another one on CNN on YouTube that you type in. Did you see the boomer guy who thought that he had invented a new kind of mathematics, and he was emailing and messaging the NSA about
really.
it? It was so stupid. It's actually funny. And the guy was like, "Yeah, I went down a 2 week like delusional episode because the Chat GPT told me I'd invented an entire new type of mathematics, and it was absolutely imperative that I immediately email and talk to the NSA."
The burden of the world is in my hands. I need to get this out there ASAP.
He really thought that, and the AI had convinced. Let me see if I'll put it underneath this. This chat is called, let's see, CN Chat GPT delusion mathematics. It's pretty funny actually. And the guy's trying to sue ChatGPT over this because he thinks it's like, dude, it's not. You had it on mirror mode, man. I've heard that some of these allow you to turn off mirror mode, but I'm not sure.
That's so interesting. Well, if I may, could I ask you, because I know there's different people who want to speak, so I want to be respectful. Could I ask you also a theological question I've been kind of wrestling with?
Sure. Yeah, whatever you want.
So I've really been trying to think when Jesus was on the cross and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." What exactly happened in that instant as Christ is declaring those words? Like ontologically, is something changing? Is something happening? Because those people aren't being saved; they're not restored in relationship with God per se. So I guess I think there's a
Well,
lot
I
of ways
think
to slice it, but yeah, what do you think?
I think in both the Orthodox and the Catholic tradition, several of those people did end up becoming saints. You have the thief on the cross, you have the Roman soldier. There are many people who were in the audience. Many of them are considered saints. So I think the purpose of the prayer, obviously, was that Christ is pleading to the Father, saying that they're doing this in ignorance, even though they're so obviously somewhat guilty because you can be willfully ignorant. Um, but it does. It's not like a blanket forgiveness any more than like Christ dying for everybody, gives everybody a blanket forgiveness. But certainly some of the people in the audience did end up in the Orthodox and the Catholic tradition being saints.
So, well, okay, fair, but I guess like when Christ says that Father forgive them, and let's say, I mean, the Father forgives them then and there, does it mean that, should they die, they're instantly in paradise, or they still have other debts to pay? Or is it just saying, Father, don't obliterate them right now, give them time to repent, don't end the story right now, but just extend them so they could turn to you for mercy? Like, is because I mean
Well,
because presumably they weren't immediately repentant. I mean, maybe some of them were upon his proclamation. I don't know.
well, I don't think Christ saying or asking for forgiveness necessarily means that people will repent. So, because you still have the human will, that's operant, that synergizes with grace to repent. So, are you meaning like did the prayer effectually, like Calvinists think, like cause them to repent? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I guess in some sense, what is the forgiveness? Because like there could be an offer of forgiveness. Hey, Father, be willing to forgive them.
Because it's the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst sin in history is to kill the Son of
Right.
God. That's like the greatest of all sins is to kill God. And so even that sin, Jesus is interceding and saying, you can even be forgiven for this.
Okay, so is it that he's just creating the pathway of saying, "Hey, God, make it available to forgive them should they repent, but if they don't repent, then
For
they're not
this
forgiven, right?"
specific sin. For this specific greatest sin, yes.
Okay, got it.
I think that's right.
Cool. All right, brother. Thanks. I'll let someone else.
Yeah, that's a great question. Appreciate that. Yep. Yonkers, what's up? You got to unmute.
Oh, I thought he was still speaking. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, what's up, man?
Yeah, I mean I hope I'm not wasting time, but it's just speaking of ChatGPT, kind of indulging people's fantasies. Um you were bringing up, this guy who was like, "Oh, I invented a new form of mathematics," and the ChatGPT is agreeing with him. It's just kind of funny how um the more we I know this is kind of a trad point that has been made a million times over, so it's not necessarily anything new, but the more we allow people to like indulge in their individual vices, whether it's narcissism or greed or lust, the more we have technologies that enable people to basically, indulge in reading as much info as they want, playing as much video games as they want, going on social media, all of this stuff. um, the more freedom we sort of give people in a way, the more the institutions that like protect us from the state or protect us from the market like break down. Like the more families weaken, the more communities weaken, and the more the power of the state and the more the power of like bureaucratic institutions like corporations of the market expands. And I know this is very trad pilled like basic bitch talking point, but it's just interesting, like, because with things like ChatGPT, allowing people to like, have these conversations or flattering people at being their AI girlfriends, or the more people, consume, social media, or the more people have access to porn or stuff like this, the more what protects our freedom from corporations or the state. Like there's three sort of hierarchies, right? Like there's the market, there's the state, and then there's civil society. And the more individual freedom you grant to people, the more civil society kind of declines in a way, like the family or the church or these institutions.
I think you're absolutely spot on with the whole weak point of the libertarian market ethos, right? If everything is about maximizing the freedom of the market, so called, or freedom in general, there's no conception of the idea of that stuff being weaponized to enslave people. Because libertarians just don't ever take it into account that, the masses can be destroyed through culture. Culture can actually. I
Through
remember when I was
freedom.
debating
Yeah,
Adam.
through freedom.
Yeah, I was debating Adam Kokesh, and I made this very point. It was like the first debate I did about libertarianism. I was like, "You don't think people can be enslaved through freedom?" And that just blew his mind. He was like, "I don't even understand. Like, what the fuck does that
Well, it's
even
funny
mean,
because
dude?"
this is a trope in like Wally and in Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, right? Like, isn't the whole idea behind Wally? I mean, the movie Wally is actually a very, I think it's one of the most trad and right wing movies ever made. Because the movie Wally is basically about a world where everyone has like an abundance of material prosperity and like an abundance of freedom to do
Right.
whatever they want, like an abundance of individualism. And as a result, they all become enslaved to the providers of these freedoms, like the providers of these pleasures. They're all just kind of like slaves of the people
Yes.
who give them like fast food and drugs. And I mean the drugs and porn are obviously not in Wally because it's a movie made for kids, but like you can kind of see that social vision of a society where there's like an infinite pleasure machine, like an infinite pleasure chamber. And if that exists,
Exactly.
if you have the freedom to indulge in that, if you have the freedom from asceticism, you have the freedom to have access to TVs or automobiles or chat GPT or social media or video games or drugs, you're going to be beholden to the very people who give you that stuff because it's so enchanting.
Yeah.
So that's basically like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World in Wally. But continue.
No, absolutely. I think you're spot on. That's even though it's quote basic bitch, it's like a position and an idea that almost nobody gets, and that's exactly how everybody's being enslaved in today's society. I think you're spot on. And it's like, people read Brave New World, they're like, "Yeah, let's do that." I mean, I don't. By the way, I don't. It's popularly conceived of as a warning text, but I think Huxley was writing about what they were actually going to do, and I don't believe he was actually warning people. I think he was a piece of shit. But uh, yeah, it's like, yeah, there's that dystopian story. Let's do that. Enchanted, what's up? Wally's a great example too. Enchanted, you have to unmute.
Yeah. Hello, Jay. I just wanted to continue the point that Drago brought up, and wanted to show one of fellow Orthodox Christians' channel. Uh, Jason Miranchuk, you were in his podcast once. He
Yeah, I remember.
does great stuff on this increasing resentment, anger in population of, let's say, the first world, right, Europe and America. And he analyzes, also goes in depth with the whole economical crisis that is going to happen pretty soon. Jay also did lectures on this, that they are planning to destroy the whole structure so that only the elites have the power and they will just grab all of it globally. Uh, and so he goes in depth in a lot of topics similar to Jay, but also goes into more, let's say, political stuff when Jay focuses on geopolitics and goes against, he calls it the spirit of the vengeful son, emphasis to the um, prodigal son, that is going to be the age of vengeance, of resentment.
Interesting.
Yeah, because
That actually looks really good. Yeah, did you share this video here?
yeah. It's a podcast,
Okay.
very good because he distills all his ideas into a podcast form because he has very long
Okay.
streams and he
Yeah,
tends
yeah.
to, yeah,
He asked me back on. Yeah, he asked me back on, and I'm gonna go back on there. But I had not seen the stream, so I just shared it. Appreciate that.
yeah.
Anything else?
No, that was it mostly.
Speaking of of vengeful sons and going into an age of young guys, vengeful and spiteful and angry, I think this is important too because one thing I've noticed that the right, especially like the Nietzschean right and the stuff that we've been talking about in the past few days, like there's not a cultivation of virtue. If you don't have a virtue ethic, and if you're not like getting people into a system where they are in rehab, and that's what Father Deacon Ananias always calls the Orthodox Church is like spiritual rehab. The reason that we all need spiritual rehab is number one that we're fallen, but you can't just solve all today's crises with politics or even politics and generic Christianity. There's got to be actually some process of healing and restoration and theosis, which is what the whole purpose of the sacraments, the divine liturgy is, that also cultivates the virtues. Because if people don't learn and cultivate the virtues, obviously by grace, they're not going to be able to function and build. If you are out of whack, right, you're going to be a destructive force. So, like a machine or something that, has missing parts or broken parts, it falls apart. If it goes out of whack, it spins out, like a washing machine that falls apart and it just spins into oblivion, right? So, you got to have uh, the virtues cultivated so that you can be a virtuous person. And that's different than the Protestant ethic. It's different than most ethics that are pushed. And we overlook and forget ethics because we think everything is just knowledge and facts and data. But if the individuals aren't being transformed to cultivate virtue, the whole project will always be a failure. And that's why, for example, think about politics. Like we've had decades now of pseudo Christian uh, politicians, fake right wing controlled opposition politicians for so long. And very, very few of them in their lives actually cultivate or demonstrate any virtues. Many of them are gay, many of them are compromised, many of them are pedophiles. I'm talking about government people, right? So, how are they going to effectively operate if they are, for example, enslaved to baser passions? Now, all of us are enslaved to some degree, but we're and kings and politicians, like we don't expect a politician or a king to be a saint. Some of them have been, very few. But the least we can expect is, don't put shit in your butt, dude. Don't grape kids. Those are the those are the minor like it's a low bar for a politician. So but you have to have that, right? Because if you don't have that in your leaders and your officials and the people that you're looking up to, like then they're not going to function. They can't function in the other areas of their life if they're enslaved in some fundamental way. And that's why the system itself has actually promoted and installed compromised pedo creeper people. It's called a kakistocracy or government by the worst, and that's by design. Curious, what's up? Looks like he's having a hard time. Ortho Gypsy, what's up? Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, so I had a question about the eschaton. Hoping ain't too off topic, but before I became Orthodox, I was a Christian Universalist. I was a big Origin guy, a big David Bentley Hart guy. And thanks to you and others in this space, I've abandoned that. I accept that Origin was condemned. I understand why, and I accept that. I do have a lingering practical problem, and I guess I would just put that simply as if in the eschaton, doesn't it seem like the ever well-being of the saved would be tainted by the ever ill-being of the unsaved, especially those that you love, your children, your spouse, your parents? How do we square that?
Right. I mean, it's an interesting question. I've seen that question raised sometimes. I think it's also possible to say we just don't know, or that the righteous, if you read the book of Revelation, chapters 5 through 9, you see that the righteous and the martyrs, they're actually celebrating divine justice. So they don't have a problem with divine justice being executed upon those on earth. And by that same measure, they wouldn't have a problem with divine justice being executed upon those in eternity. So I think that might be the closest to any revealed answer that we have, and beyond that, we're just maybe not told. Spit, what's up?
Hey, I'm kind of new to this whole loner thing because you kind like the only reason why I requested up is because you kind of like struck something when what you said when you started talking about that. But as a new loner, kind of because I've recently lost a lot of friends on the left and on the right because of I guess this journey toward like orthodoxy, and what is it? I have found a lot of refuge in going to church. And sorry if I sound nervous because this is kind of a new thing for me, but what is it as like I started like reading books and stuff, and I started like I was like, well, I'll start picking up Karl Marx and his book The Communist Manifesto, and I kind of wanted to write essays and stuff like that on it. And the more, and I wanted to kind of see if like I was correct on my analysis of this book so far and what he's saying. And basically I've come to the realization that no liberal in my college has ever read this book because what is it, Karl Marx is literally making the argument for homogeny, and he's also making what is it, a Malthusian argument, an anti-populist argument, when he talks about what is it, there being too much abundance, and that abundance will rely on, and therefore the population's too high or something like that. And then he also talks about how capitalism has ruined cultures, and I'm like, well, aren't you, if capitalism has ruined cultures by making them mix, aren't you making the argument that they shouldn't mix?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on in noticing internal contradictions within Marxism. Absolutely. In fact, Marx has all kinds of positions that the actual social justice warrior college people of today would totally be freaked out about. I mean, um, for example, Marx was against open borders and against free trade. Or excuse me, he was pro free trade, and he thought that you shouldn't have like unmitigated immigration because it would hurt the working class, which is ironic because the social justice warrior people today have suddenly flipped to where they're pro open borders, open immigration, um,
And I have a
and some of
follow-up,
them,
sorry.
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my follow up would be like, because I realized since no one has read Marx, and like there's like in my liberal arts college, literally there's self-proclaimed communists everywhere. Like they're just proud about it, and they wear badges and they wear shirts, and I'm like I know they've never read it. I know they've never read it because they would be against like literally the first 5 pages. They would literally be throwing up. But
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
my thing is like they have to be getting it from somewhere, and um my ideas are like, well, this is a really liberal art, very liberal art school, and they have to be getting it from the media that they're digesting then, right?
Yes,
So they have
exactly.
to be getting it from like shows like Arcane or Has Been Hotel or all these other lame ass animes, right? And
Absolutely.
like, and because I basically now have gone back and started hate watching all of these animes because I like because I feel like there's been so much I missed, and I'm like, holy shit, it's all about making fun of God, it's all about making fun of the family, it's all about making fun of the culture, everything that the pillars, they're going after the pillars, and they don't need to explain the ideology whatsoever. They just have to make these kids feel something, right? and
Absolutely.
and so like as a young like as a young 25-year-old that's like spiraling right now, what is it, like my goal now has like kind of switched to like making video essays and writing about all this like stuff that I'm seeing before they come after me or something.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I did the same thing in my 20s. I read a lot and I wrote a lot, and for me that was a good release. It was a good kind of outlet. And then, maybe down the road you might even turn those into books. I mean, that's kind of what I did eventually. So I think you're on the right path there with that. And yeah, you're noticing what I noticed in college too is like all these leftists are just retards. They have no idea what they're talking about. They don't read any of these texts. Ultraviolet, what's up? I mean, ultraviolet, what's up?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had some connection issues. I just wanted to say to the speaker who was on earlier when he talked about Marx, it's very interesting to look at the letters that he wrote to Frederick Engels. I was trying to find one on my phone, and there's one particular one where It's just the N word every other word.
Oh, I forgot to say, yeah, he doesn't like black people.
Yeah,
He's also he
yeah,
also is like Malthusian too. Like there's like green agenda Malthusian stuff in Marx and Engels as well.
yeah. Well, I just think that I think they say he was an atheist. That he obviously had a very religious upbringing. His grandfather was a rabbi, I believe. His father changed to, I think, to Christianity, so they claim. I'm not
Yeah,
sure about
I
all
think
that.
it is they became Lutheran. Yeah.
Yeah, but they obviously had a massive. But they say he's an atheist, but it's not that. It's, if he was an atheist, he wouldn't have a. He would have just said, "Oh, I don't believe in it," and that's the end of that. But he was obviously against it, like, and
Yeah.
I think that that's what this whole cultural Marxism thing, Marxism and what is evolved into, it's all anti-Christian from top to bottom. That's exactly
Oh,
what it
absolutely.
says.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you read all the Frankfurt School people who that's where we get cultural Marxism from is the Frankfurt School. I mean, they wrote, the authoritarian personality disorder. They were all about, critiquing and taking down not just the culture, but the root of culture, which is the family, which is, according to them, the root of fascism, because the male father figure is a fascist. And that means you have to destroy God the Father, who is the ultimate fascist. What's up, JR?
What's up? Yeah, the cultural Marxists are very tempting, like for even someone like myself who read them, 20 years ago, because they do make some good arguments against like plastic culture. But that you got to remember, and I'm saying this for the younger guy who was calling in, Marxism in its critiques, it's only there to destroy. It isn't there to like, oh, hey, let's make some cultural critiques and try to build up the culture from there. Its goal is destruction. And when something's goal is destruction, it's like it can't really go anywhere. And that's why you do notice the contradictions in Marxism, because one of the funny things was I talked to a professor from USC one time who was one of the experts on the Frankfurt School and on the modernists. And modernism in itself can't perpetuate modernism. It ends up like if you build a modernist piece of architecture, it becomes outdated by the time the building's even built. And that's the same thing with the philosophy.
Yeah, the professors are pretty candid. I had some similar conversations with one of my graduate advisor who was studied at the Frankfurt School, so he knew all about this, and
Yeah, you're
he was very candid about
yeah,
all
your
that.
professor was studied under Habermas, and even Habermas.
No, he studied under Habermas's protege,
Oh,
but yeah.
okay, yeah, but Habermas, like they're into perpetual destruction. Like they need to have things to destroy. That's almost like the philosophy in of itself is
Yeah, no, it's called culture critique, and it's like you critique the critique, and then you critique the critique of the critique.
exactly.
That was one of the first things that Dr. Martel told us in our Frankfurt School class.
Yeah, there's no value in it once you get down to the bottom of it. Like I said, you could read something like it and say, "Oh, I agree with this," but then when you get to the foundation of it, it has no value, and they even admit that it doesn't have any value because I don't. I wonder if some of them. I mean, they're pretty smart guys. I've often wondered if they felt short-sighted. They were short-sighted in their ultimate philosophy, or if they were just demonically possessed.
Yeah, well, they did have a Nietzschean turn. That was the dialectic of enlightenment. So I think they did realize that, like, where are we going? What's the maybe it is all power
That,
relations.
that's
So, and that is, I'm not saying they're Nietzschean, but it's called the Nietzschean turn that they had. But you're right, John, and they just said you just negate the negation, and you keep negating until what? I mean, what is the end goal here? I guess just the destruction of everything, and that's why in Father Seraphim Rose's book, he basically just says the end of it is nihilism. It's just destroy everything for the sake of destruction because fuck everything and everything sucks. But yeah, great points. Shine, what's up, man?
Hey man, you can hear me good?
Yeah.
All right. So I kind of just been getting into like orthodoxy and stuff really recently, and I have a pretty decent understanding of the transcendental argument as far as like the revelation of God is required. I just wanted to know, as far as does uh, does Jesus dying on the cross have does that tie into the transcendental argument? Is that required?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's an argument for the entire Christian worldview. So ultimately, yes. Obviously, in the course of an argument, you can't like list every aspect of the worldview, but the transcendental argument is a comparison of arguments, excuse me, a comparison of paradigms. So ultimately, yes, it's kind of assumed or it's implied in the idea that tag is an argument not just for an abstract conception of God or a God, it's a specific God and it's a specific worldview, Christian worldview, Christian metaphysics. So ultimately, yes, it includes all those things, including history, providence, creation. All those things are kind of subsumed under the argument, even though they're not explicitly listed, just because it would be impossible to list every aspect of the worldview. But ultimately, yes. And I think Father Deacon Ananias has a couple good talks on his channel about that specific issue. Maddie, what's up? Maddie, you want to unmute?
Hey, how we doing?
Oh, great, man. What's up?
I'm chilling, man. Yesterday, bro? Some of these gropers, man. So I just want to address this quickly. Some of these gropers are so fucking retarded, man. That one dude who came into the conversation, who was just throwing obviously ad hominems. It's insane to think that he thought it was actually superior to be not informed on geopolitics and not actually read books. It's actually better in some way to just have kind of a surface level, low tier perspective on these sort of things. And it's insane that they parade this around as if this is a superior way to try and think about stuff. It's insane. Even when you was questioning about like why are you insulting me? Like, what have I literally done to you? And he hasn't got a response. It's just fucking dicks, man. I can't take some of these people. They're disgusting, honestly. And I just want, I don't know, like some of this Groper stuff, man. It just, I don't know whether or not, like, I think a large majority of this is just people who are very unserious and they spend a lot of time just watching rage based stuff. They're not even necessarily interested in trying to make some sort of like
No, I think you're
political
absolutely
movement.
right. That's what it is. Yeah.
I
They're
got
just
one.
trolling.
Yeah, bro, 100%. I got one question in terms of orthodoxy. It's kind of ironic talking about low tier stuff. You see in Proverbs chapter 30,
Hmm.
there's a part in it where in from verse 3 to 4, we were speaking about theophanies and started to recognize these things in the Old Testament where we start to recognize God has a complex relationship with himself. It explicitly says about how he's referring to various things about who else could do these things other than God, and then somewhere down the line in chapter 4, or in verse 4, sorry, it says explicitly, "And what is the name of his son?" Are you familiar with that verse?
Yeah, Sam Shamoon uses it a lot when he's arguing with Muslims. It's a text that I think is in the Septuagint, but not in the Masoretic.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. All right, bro. But well, that's all I wanted to say. Enjoy your space, bro. I appreciate
Yeah.
your stuff, man. Honestly, I just want you to
Thanks,
know
man.
that a lot of young people watch your stuff and they really value your time and your education. So it's not just like retards.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's I want to try to reach out to more young dudes and have more of because what we want to do is cultivate the virtues, right? And just rage baiting and cussing people out all day long on Twitter, like it's not really going to help your life. Hating women is not going to make your life better. You're just going to be more and more miserable. So DCA, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Jay?
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, I just wanted to piggyback on the guy that was talking about tag. It's something I've been kind of looking into tag
Uh-huh.
recently about. As far as I understand, tag is where it's addressing coherence truth theory before correspondence truth theory. And often, once I prove that the coherency argument, people often ask, how is my ultimate presupposition of divine revelation rooted in reality through correspondence theory? And to answer his question, it's rooted through the actual historical presence of Jesus, because since Jesus was a historical person, it ties the Bible to reality. And then because he claims to be the one that ate a meal with Moses on the mountain, that gives us justification for all the Old Testament scriptures. And the apostles and apostolic succession gives us correspondence truth theory for the New Testament. Am I on the right train of thought of how that works?
I mean, I think those things relate to one another, but I wouldn't say that uh, we necessarily have to adopt any of those. I think there's elements of correspondence theory of truth that we have. There's elements of coherence theory that we have. And because none of those secular limited theories are going to be the total answer, because it's more than that. Just like, it's the one and the many problem is not a problem because it's a both and not either or. It's both and. So what about correspondence versus coherence? It's both and, right? In terms of ethics too, we're not limited to one, strict type of ethic where we can't utilize economia, and, bend the rules to fit the situation. So is that, oh, you're a consequentialist? Well, there might be some situations where consequentialist ethics comes in. It doesn't mean that my whole ethic is consequentialist relativistic ethics. And I think you even see that in Roman Catholic ethicists and saints that struggle with this, who make some pretty significant mistakes, because certain things are mortal sins, but then they're allowed because of the greater evil, which is a consequentialist ethic, right? It's like Augustine and Aquinas saying that the state should allow whorehouses to exist. And yes, they say that. And what's the reason? Well, it's worse off if they don't exist. Well, that's a consequentialist ethic. Now, I'm not even saying that there haven't been Orthodox rulers and kings and whatever that have allowed prostitution houses to exist. I understand that. But my point is that our ethic isn't a rigid, strict ethic without economia. And I'm just contrasting the two ethical systems. We have a lot more flexibility. And the reason that the Roman Catholic ethic, traditionally speaking, isn't flexible in that regard is because they say, for example, that the moral law, the reason things are mortal sins is because they're based on the eternal law. And the eternal law is God's own essence itself. Well, if God's essence is unchanging, then mortal sins have to eternally be mortal sins. Well, now we have a problem because God gave David all of Saul's wives. So God's now participating in polygamy. And now God is the promoter and the participator in a mortal sin, according to the Roman Catholic eternal law ethic. So you see the rigidity ends up in these absurdities, right? And you get the same thing with the reasoning why uh, birth control is wrong. And I'm not pro birth control, but I'm saying that the reasoning that they have is just Aristotle's telos, right? So the purpose of the sexual organ is to procreate. So if you jerk off, that's actually worse than sleeping with your mom or your sister. I'm not joking. That's Aquinas's argument. Why? Because the act itself is more frustrated and more removed from its purpose when you jerk off than having sex with your mom. Now, they're both mortal sins, but the point is that it's worse in that system. Why? Well, nothing to do really with divine revelation, just to do with the medieval Aristotelian worldview. And this is what led them to think, that ensoulment, babies aren't babies until like 40 days after conception, or I forget the exact ensoulment. It's just all weird and locked into these like dogmatic metaphysical principles that aren't really anything to do with divine revelation. They're just medieval dogmas. H. Brosy, what's up? So in the same way, like, we don't want the Orthodox position and ethic and epistemology to be locked into a secular theory like coherence or uh, correspondence theory. Go ahead, Ace, brother.
Hey, what's up, Jake? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, I want. I know Maddie just. Oh, I kind of wanted to add on. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with him. You know, I mean, yeah, 2 days ago when I called in, I was basically saying the same thing about the Goipers, but like it kind of hit me yesterday. I was thinking like, you know, maybe we just, well, not we. Obviously, you're the speaker. You know, FDA. He addresses some of this stuff sometimes. You know, plenty of the other older Orthodox guys. You know, I guess everybody just needs to be more patient with them. What hit me was, you know, like they seem to cling to Nick so much because obviously he's a reflection of them. He's another young guy that's gotten the exact same treatment from the world. It's even worse for them than it will be for me because all the anti-man shit that I or any other young guy have had to deal with, any Gen Zer has had to deal with since they stepped foot in school or just being out in the world. You know, even if you were homeschooled, it's even worse for them because they're all most of these young guys. Well, apparently, like most of the Groypers are actually Mexicans. LARPing is white, but obviously, there are going to be a lot of them that are white. Nick definitely is. So, well, shit, half white, I guess. You know, that's just adding on to it. And I guess that's why they cling on to him. You know, cling on to him the way they do. You know, there's a guy that's speaking out, that's talking about their problems. Obviously, I don't necessarily because to us, the theology would be the most important part. It's not even close to being the most important part for them. But you know, as like I just said, you know, they're still pretty young. You know, they have time. I'm 25. It's not like I'm younger than Nick. I just made obviously significant different decisions than you know most of the young guys my age. I chose to be married and get a very well paying job and a father at a young age. I didn't I didn't want to deal you know with the outside world shit, especially women. Um, so yeah, yeah, that's pretty much. I don't know if you saw what I just DM'd you. I kind of wanted to comment on that. I there's those two pictures of this interaction that I had last night with this with I don't know who that guy is, the Teens for I think it's you know Teens for Christ or whatever. And he's saying he first of all he has no idea that you've had well this would be 3 days straight of opening up spaces talking about Hitler. He doesn't know about any of the streams or spaces prior that you have talking about Hitler, taking an anti-Hitler position, and that's what the original post was about. And somehow or another, he ties that into you being somewhat responsible for like you know young guys coming into the church and being pro Hitler, even though like I just I see that right there. The Groyper stuff obviously is very annoying, especially when you know they do the whole you know you got no motion thing. Like well, nobody has motion in comparison to Nick. He's like the biggest motherfucker on the planet right now. That's just the truth. So that doesn't necessarily count for anything. And if his position is false, it, you know, his popularity means absolutely nothing. It does to them, but in reality,
Yo,
it means nothing.
that's what people kept saying. Like, well, why don't you have his numbers? And I'm like, well, number one, weren't you arguing for many years that Nick was suppressed? So
Yeah,
you don't think the stuff I talk about
yeah.
suppressed?
Like, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, there is, I don't know if you saw it, but somebody commented on one of these posts that were replying to, you know, what you posted, you know, from the text about Hitler, and somebody said something about esoteric Hollywood, and they said, and I know you saw it because I saw you reply. They said, you know, a book about Hollywood control, and said nothing about Jews. So obviously that's wrong because, like you said, the very very first page is about the Rothschilds. Let's set that aside. They see what happens, and I meant to say this for so long. They see what happens to people when they talk about Jews publicly, and they condemn anybody that does not happen to talk about Jews publicly. Why the hell would you want that to happen to everybody? You saw what happened to Nick, him getting debanked and somewhat booted off the face of the planet. Why would you expect anybody else to do that and suffer the exact same consequences?
Right.
And I've said it before. That's Fed shit. You're the Fed. It's not anybody else. If you want people to do this and get the exact same treatment that Nick did,
Yeah.
you're the damn Fed.
Hold on one. Yeah. So basically, I mean, at the light, are you turning out the light? Hold on one second. I'm trying to get directions here. I think this might work. Let's see. Just go out here. I'm at the four-way. You can just go out here and take the. I can't tell if you can go that way or not. Just turn around, go out here, and take the four-way to the right. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're spot on with like the issues of how the media works and all that. Like all this content, all this stuff. First of all, I mean, my stuff was persecuted. I got demonetized in 2019 for talking about stuff you're not supposed to talk about. I lost my entire website in 2018. The whole thing was deleted. All my means of income for talking about what you're not supposed to talk about. And that includes Zionist type issues as well. I had threats to get fired in 2007 and 8 when I was talking about Zionism on my website back then. I knew what the Talmud was. I'd post on my website about Elder Ephraim against the Zionists, about the Talmud and all that. And I had people calling up my workplace and saying, "We're going to get you fired for talking about this, and we're going to find out where you're at." On and on and on. I've dealt with this before Nick even knew any of this stuff, so I know all about this. It's not new. I chose a different tactic about how to go about it. Beyond that, the book is not first and foremost about Hollywood control. It's about cults and symbolism in film. It's not about everybody who is Jewish that runs a production company. Which, by the way, everybody knows that it's most of the production companies are run owned by Jews. Shocker. Jews write books about it called Empire of Their Own, which I was on Red Ice like 7 years ago doing a whole interview on the book Empire of Their Own. So people don't know that I talk about this stuff and have been talking about this stuff, but I chose a different tactic because I thought that was a wiser approach to get more effective stuff done. And I thought the political approach was the way to go in 2007 and 8. My website back then was focused on politics. It was an anti-Zionist, pro-Ron Paul, libertarian-focused type website. And guess what got done? Nothing. So what I decided was, okay, maybe I should rethink all this. And I decided also that people don't change things through politics. In your 20s, you think that you're going to change things through political action and activism. And then by the time that you're in your 40s and you see that politics is business as usual, and the only thing that really changes things in politics is people with hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars, you kind of wise up. And a lot of these people who are just damaged and psycho 20-year-old people addicted to, hentai or whatever, like they're going to learn the hard way how the world really works, and they're going to wise up hopefully by the time they get into their 30s.
Yeah, like like Andrew, he deals with this shit too. The people that talk shit about him for not wanting to consistently address Israel or Zionism or whatever. I mean, I just don't get it. We you done plenty of talks on propriety recently, and I don't understand how they don't get this. It's a time and a place for everything, and the there have been people that that come in the YouTube live chat and ask why doesn't Jay talk about X, Y, or Z? And I tell them all the time, like, he's gonna do a space on it eventually. Just follow him on Twitter and call in whenever you can. Like, it's just something you have to avoid on YouTube. Now maybe now they allow it a little bit more. I can't really tell because
Yeah, you could talk
they're on.
about Zionism on YouTube, but and I think we've talked about Talmudic stuff some. I mean, I've been talking about that Peter Schaefer book, Jesus and the Talmud, for a long time, but yeah, I think it's just limited. Like, you can't talk about race or that kind of stuff on YouTube, obviously.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, and that was like before, maybe before last year when the whole Jew and Zionist JQ, as they call it, like really took the fore. Like back in 2023, I mean, basically every stream there'd be somebody that'd come into the Crucible chat and ask Andrew, about race this or race that. Like, what happens to people that talk about race on YouTube? Why do you want him to talk about race on YouTube? Just leave it the hell alone. And there have been times where he give his position if he was able to, discreetly. They don't want discretion. They want you to talk about it every
Yeah.
damn day.
Well,
And
I think that possibly fitting into this overall plan is to. Now, I'm not so totally separate from the issue of whether race is real, which I do think races are real. They do exist, obviously. But aside from that, the system wants everybody radicalized because they're going to try to create some kind of civil war scenario. I think they really are going to try. I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen in 2 years or 5 years. But I mean, all the propaganda. The Democrats are literally saying on the news all the time, get guns, black people, get ready, they're coming to kill you, they're coming to take you away. It's just like they say the craziest shit. I don't know if you saw Don Lemon. Don Lemon was saying this like yesterday, and I'm like, dude, these mainline political people are so guilty of like the shit that they're saying, that you should just start killing ICE agents, all this kind of stuff. Like if you said that, if you were a conservative and you said anything like that, you would immediately be put in jail. You'd be called a Fed, etc. But when they do it, it's like, yeah, no, that's where we're at, right? So they're gonna push and push until they get some kind of confrontation, and it's just insane. It's just so retarded.
I don't keep up with Don Lemon at all. Ironically,
No, but I
Don
don't
Lemon,
either. It's just that it was like literally was just saying, if you see ICE agents coming, people shoot them. Like he was,
yeah,
this is crazy, and people are saying that Don Lemon might go to jail, which obviously he should for saying that, because you're inciting
yeah,
people to violence.
yeah. That's and especially when if it's targeted, like two black people, I'm like, because they're gonna fucking do it, man. Like, yeah, that's great. Like I said, I didn't know he said any of that.
Yeah, that was
But yeah, that's
yesterday
what's
or
up.
2 days ago, I think, was when Don Lemon was saying that, because Alex was playing the clips yesterday. John, do you want to say something?
I wanted to say that the kid earlier who was talking about communism, he said something there and it just clicked. Is he said nobody reads the Communist Manifesto, going back to that nobody reads the actual philosophies they espouse, just like yesterday. It was people, it was person after
Yeah,
person.
remember not so erudite, exact same thing.
Yeah, it was person after person where you would ask them, can you give me a source on that? What book did you read? Have you read this book? And everybody's like, I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah, I don't
Right.
know. And so that's even funny too, that on the left wing communist side, which I'm not surprised at that, but like they've never even read the Communist Manifesto. They've been taught in slogans and paragraphs and memes and all that as well.
Yeah, well, all of the culture in terms of the youth especially are their energy and their zeal is harnessed by the establishment in both a far right and a far left way, and they're used. But when you're in your 20s, you're too naive to know that. You don't know about social engineering. For example, the NATO PSYOP document, Cognitive Warfare, has a whole section on how they're going to weaponize trolling. And we saw that, for example, with NAFO. I don't know if you guys remember the NAFO trolls that were rolled out. It was all the people using the Doge dog from like Dogecoin as their symbol, and it was all online military and intelligence, like cybercom warfare, uh, promoting NATO and the Ukraine. And so the NAFO rollout was an example of weaponized trolling, and all they did was troll. Like the bots were doing nothing, and some of them are real people, but all they did was troll. Like nothing was real, nothing was. It was like nihilism weaponized through trolling.
Yeah, how people need to think about this. There might be something that you agree with that can be weaponized by somebody else and used as a means for creating chaos. You might agree with it, it might be true, but then somebody has hijacked the thing that you think is true, and then it goes universal or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that like that can't bring truth out into a larger, set of people, but most of the time they I mean, think back in our day, think about how like the Republicans hijacked the Tea Party, which was like anti-tax thing for to start, and then they turned it into like a neocon thing. So that would be an example.
That is a great example. I forgot about, yeah, the Tea Party was like this Ron Paul audit the Fed thing, and then suddenly it was bought off, and it was Sarah Palin and John Cornyn speaking at the Tea Party.
Yeah, and that's happened. So I mean, I wasn't there with Occupy Wall Street. I don't know. I didn't. That was not my thing. But alleged.
Jamie went to Occupy Wall Street. She saw that.
What's that?
I said Jamie. She was actually at Occupy
Okay.
Wall Street. She went to those, and she saw it got basically bought out and taken over by the Democratic Party.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, that's what I've heard from people that's what the case was too. It was grassroots things, kind of talking about grassroots issues, and then eventually somebody comes in and starts talking about something like, well, we need to take to the streets and uh, start being violent in return to the people who are being violent. And it's like, yeah, you don't want to do that.
Well, the BLM official thing on Twitter put up a couple weeks ago after the arena event that black people have a right now to exercise violence because of being oppressed. They said it's a black people have a quote natural right to violence against whites. That's the official BLM profile 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I heard that lady saying that on that clip. That was crazy.
Blaze, what's up?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, so I heard David has more time on his hands. I was wondering, when are you and Kai and David gonna get back with the Oriental streams?
I don't know. Kai said he has a new job and now he doesn't know when he's going to have time, but we're going to try to do it. Sam, what's up? Sam, I mean,
Hey, what's up, Jay? Can you hear me well?
yes, sir.
Yeah, so I just finished reading the Cosmic Trilogy, no small part due to your recommendation. I started with the last one, not realizing it was a trilogy. And I was wanting to know, I know it's fictitious and it's, novelization and all that stuff, but I was wondering, what do you think about the Adila and the Oyasa and like the kind of like the cosmos and the theology of it?
I did some podcasts on it. I don't remember specifically what I said. I mean, I think C.S. Lewis was unintentionally hinting at a cosmic theology, like something like Saint Maximus, but I don't know how aware of that he was. But you can go to my channel and there's a whole podcast on the space trilogy. But thank you for that question. I do think that the aliens are demons, so I agree with that. Andrea, what's up?
Hi, Jay. First of all, thank you so much for your work. Super big fan. God bless you for that. Just had a quick question. Maybe it's off topic about your Athens and Jerusalem talk with Ladika Jonah. I wanted to know if that's going to be recorded at all and released for other people to hear if we can't make it to in person.
I honestly don't know if they're recording it. Um, they may. They have been recording things pretty consistently at church, and they live stream the liturgy. So my guess would be that they're probably planning to record it. But I don't know for sure, and I don't know if it'll be on uh, whose channel or what. But I think so. But thank you for that, Mackenzie. What's up? Hey, what's up?
Hey, I had a question. Oh, um, uh, you know what? Go to the next person. I was just
Taco, what's up?
Hey, hey Jay, this is you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Hey, I had a question about uh have you looked into the geofencing that Israel did in the West Protestant
Yeah, in
churches?
the
Like,
Colorado area, and they were going to try to target it with pro-Israeli propaganda. Yeah, I saw that.
okay, yeah, that was very interesting. My cousins here, I live in the Midwest, but they're all evangelicals, and they think that Israel was a biblical prophecy, which is pretty dumb. I don't know if you
Yeah, I
heard
mean, the
of that
nation
before.
state of Israel being founded as a, atheist socialist entity, is ridiculous in terms of like, oh, that's God's chosen people. But I do think that the scriptures teach that there is a future conversion of the Jews. And most of the church fathers agree with that interpretation. But I don't think that means that God is like legitimating the 1948 UN recognition. It's not like God speaks to the UN. What's up, EMP?
Hi, Jay. I have a question about all believer polemics. I don't believe you've ever covered this, if I'm correct. I myself am a
Hold on.
member.
We did cover it a long time ago on a stream with Sneck, and Sneck knows a lot more about that than I do. So you could probably go to his profile, or you could ask him. He would know more than me, actually.
Ah, cool. I'll check that out then.
Uh-huh.
Thanks.
You know what's interesting, Jay?
What?
Both you and I being raised Protestant is how long the word concept fallacy of Israel prevailed amongst
That's a
Protestants.
good point. Yeah, we don't even think about how it's a word concept fallacy. I didn't even think about that. That is what it is. Go ahead, say more about that if you want. I was just chiming in, agreeing.
No, that's just what came to mind when the last person was speaking. I was like, oh, that's funny. It's really just a word concept fallacy, and you go through your whole life thinking, Israel is the country of Israel. It's not the biblical,
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and I think that this is very uh, common amongst evangelicals who often fall into word concept fallacies of just thinking, oh, it says Israel in the Bible. There's a country in the Middle East. That's the same thing. It must be the same. Cape, what's up? Yeah, you have to unmute, man. Cape, unmute phone.
Oh, sorry, I was going to throw a hand up there, boss.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, appreciate the mic. Yeah, I get fairly tired of us getting mired in the semantical weeds of the Israel argument. There is no question that Jews existed in that region for thousands of years.
Yeah, I didn't
So,
deny that.
I, I'm at the point where, frankly, I don't care if you want to call it Jewville or Israel, or you want to go back to Judea. I frankly couldn't care less. But I mean,
The name isn't the issue. The
there's
idea is that what God sanctioned in 1948?
oh, it's not what God sanctioned. No, certainly not. And I think to your earlier point, no, God didn't speak through the UN. God wasn't. Huh. If you look at the history of the League of Nations and the United Nations, no, that's certainly not an operation under God, in my opinion. But it doesn't change the historical relevance of the Jewish identity in that region.
Yeah, I didn't say it did. That's why I said that the book of Romans predicts a future conversion of the Jews. So the Jews still have to exist, but that doesn't mean that.
Well,
What?
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But that
No, I was going to say there already has been a a conversion of some Jews. They were
no,
the
right.
first
But I think
Christians,
Romans
right?
11 is talking about a universal conversion worldwide, and that's the patristic consensus is pretty much that it is talking about that.
For sure. But I mean, that's what that's the first Christians were Jewish converts, and they weren't necessarily Jewish converts. I mean, like
I
101,
know
not
that,
to
man. I'm
not to
talking about Romans
yeah,
11, where Paul says that the whole world will come alive when
yep,
they accept the Messiah.
true enough. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Dan, what's up? Unmute.
Oh, hey Jay. Appreciate your content. I had a question for you. Been following your stuff for a long time. I know we talk a lot about uh, geopolitics in the United States and the socialist movement, globalist movement, taking over our country's, direction and everything. What I'm curious about, is how to think about what Russia is doing, because they're currently portrayed as the primary adversary to the United States. To like you listen to Putin and stuff, he'll talk about multipolarity and all this stuff. On the other hand, they seem to be creating their own, you know, parallel structures that to me look a lot like.
Yeah, they have the same tendencies toward technocracy, and they have, a lot of the same problems. So I think Putin is a pragmatist. I don't think he's like an ideologically committed, you know, beige trad person per se. I mean, he's maybe more beige and trad than like the Western, pedo elite or whatever. But I don't put any hope or trust in a nation state as being some sort of like political salvation. I don't think that Putin's going to come. For one, for example, both Putin and the EP, or excuse me, the MP, have a policy that, there's a lot of Muslims in Moscow, so we'll have a general Orthodox Muslim alliance because Muslims are trad. I totally disagree with that approach. So I think that yes, and I had a friend that just spent a year. He moved his family to Russia for the last year, and he was explaining that there's still a lot of problems, obviously, in Russia with like the Soviet holdover stuff. It's very difficult to have a business. It's very difficult to like get basic things done because there's still a lot of Soviet style bureaucracy there. So yeah, there's absolutely tons of problems in terms of Russia as a nation state or a system. But I do think that if you were to look at it from a spiritual perspective, when Napoleon goes after Russia, and then when Hitler goes after Russia, like there is a spiritual motivation that I think is satanic in that, and most of the Orthodox saints and church fathers for us have pointed out that they were antichrist because they were intent on coming to destroy or extinguish, Russian Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah, because like that's what is so confusing as I observe what they're doing. On the one hand, it seems like they really are forming this counterweight to the global homo race communism and all that. But it's also like,
Yeah.
well, this was the bastion of communism. This was the this is where
Yeah,
a lot of this stuff was
I
being
don't
pushed
think that a
out.
lot of those. I mean, not many of those people, believe in bringing back the Romanovs or something like that. So, like, it's not
Yeah.
like a really. It's more of a strategic, political alliance that you see, like Dugan talk about with like, Islam's base. It's going to be joined with us because it's anti-liberal. But I don't really think it is. I don't think Islam is anti-liberal. I think Islam is satanic.
Yeah. If you don't mind, one last question I had is around any reading recommendations you'd have, because I look into this topic and everything I find is just like so. I mean, everything's biased, of course, but it's like so ridiculously biased. It's like either Russia is literally the greatest evil that has ever existed, 10 times Hitler or
I mean,
whatever, or
Dugan's books are interesting, and they're insightful in ways on this topic, and even he's critical of Putin at times. But I don't agree
yeah.
with Dugan's Gnosticism. But he's probably the writer who writes the most about this in a way that is still even critical of Putin.
Okay. Yeah, I read them a little bit, so maybe I'll just dig in some more. Is there anything in particular you would draw attention
He
to?
has uh, obviously his book Fourth Political Theory. He has Putin versus Putin. And then he has another book, I forget what it is, that's pretty good about just geopolitics in general. But and again, I'm not saying, oh, I believe everything that Alexander Dugin says, because every time I talk about this, people are like, look at Dyer's a Duganite. Ugh. It's like
Yeah.
I've said, it doesn't matter how many times I say that I disagree with his Gnostic position. People just still be like, oh, he's a Duganite. He's a Duganite.
Yeah, you're not allowed to read people and comment on them
Yeah,
unless
apparently,
you
if you read
100% agree.
someone, it's only because you are a slavish devotee. So if I quote Carol Quigley, it's only because
Right.
I'm an absolute slavish devotee of Carol Quigley and I'm a Zionist propagandist. Mud, what's up?
Dugan has a book on Platonic uh, politics or something like that.
Yes, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of. I might not have, I don't even know if I've read that one. I know I've read the other one. Mud was.
Hey, thanks for the mic. Let me know if the background noise is too loud. I apologize. I have a
I can hear you.
carpet being cleaned in the other room. um, well, I'm an American, and it's very strange why a foreign country is controlling our government, our speech, overrepresented in everything, pharma, media, um, and they're trying to breach our First Amendment rights. Now, I don't care what other country it would be. If this were, say China trying to do this, well, everyone would be up in arms. Well, even Mexico, if they were trying to step on our First Amendment, we'd be up in arms. But somehow, if Israel wants to do it or introduce no hide laws, well, no problem. And if anyone has backlash against freedom of speech being implemented, all of a sudden we're anti-Semitic. Because I reject any moniker of anti-Semitism, considering we're talking about people that don't even know the word of Semite,
Yeah, it's
right?
absolutely. I made all that same. I'm not disagreeing
Yeah,
with you. I made all those
and
same arguments on a stream the other day.
yeah, I'm just an American that wants to be left alone and wants to be able to speak freely and not have that stepped on. It's a simple thing, and for that, I'm characterized and called all kinds of names when nothing could be further from the truth. I have no ill will to anyone. I just want to be left alone as an American, and appreciate the space and the opportunity. Thank you.
Efrey. Go ahead, man. I'm mute.
Sorry about that. I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about, if that's okay. But I'd probably take like more than a couple minutes. I'll just get into it. The first thing is earlier you were talking about AI, like destroying people's minds, and it happened to probably my closest lifelong friend. I'm only 22, but at age 22, 20 years is a long time. So it was pretty tragic. I sent him the um, Joe Rogan episode about remote viewing because I watched it and I thought it was kind of interesting. And ever since then, the last probably at this point, 5 or 6 months, he has been having conversations with Grok and ChatGPT where he's convinced himself that he's discovered. I mean, not even he's convinced himself, but these AIs have convinced him that he's discovered this new flawless method of remote viewing where you can access the consciousness of computers. Like, dude, computers aren't conscious. Like, there is legitimate trickery regarding consciousness, but not with computers. And so it's just like fundamentally flawed in that way. And he's gone completely off the rails. He's having these, very, very strong delusions of grandeur, and it ended up being the end of our friendship because he's in complete psychosis, and I'm just convinced that he's becoming a danger to not only to himself but to the people around him. And it genuinely breaks my heart because we've been friends for our entire lives. I was in the hospital with his family the day he was born,
That's crazy, man.
and well, it's just like the reason I bring it up is as this is a testimony to, like, we really are dealing with like probably the worst thing that has happened, or the worst technological innovation that has happened since the internet, if you want to take it that far. But if you don't, then in the last probably 100 or so years, and it is way, way more common than people think because it's one of those things where it's sort of a sleeping giant. It's like there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are undergoing this exact same transformation from a human being to, well, I'm nothing without my AI. It's like I've known him his entire life, obviously, as I've said before. I know how intelligent and educated he is. And he created this public Twitter profile where he's talking to Grok about this stuff and using words that not only he's never used before, but that I know he doesn't know what the fuck they mean. I just know you don't know what you're talking about. And so I reasoned that he must be using ChatGPT to talk to Grok. So all he is at this point is a vessel for ChatGPT and Grok to talk to each other. And he's completely delusional in it, and it's just insane. And so this is happening to a lot of people without, under everybody's noses.
That's insane,
And
dude. That's crazy. That did you see the clip I put below the chat of the boomer that fell into delusion just like that, thinking that he had discovered a new math and he was like emailing the NSA.
well, so that I haven't watched it yet. I bookmarked it because I've just been listening to the space, but it is basically the exact same thing. And it really truly worries me for like what is going to come from this, because I
So people are
understand
going to
that
be like
this.
brainwashed and thinking that they're talking to like deities and shit, and that they're conduits for deities, right?
Absolutely, but my bigger worry is that what place does this have in the elites' transhumanist
No,
future?
that's what
Like,
I'm
is
saying. Like they're
this?
going to try to
Yeah.
convince people that. Well, no, Yuval Harari talked about this. He's like the AI will be the new Silicon Sage. So that's probably where it's going.
Yeah, so that was the first thing. The second thing is, I know Rachel is in here. I just wanted to tell her that I bought a copy of Occult Feminism, um, because I've been hearing about it for so long, and I just never got around to reading it. I finally pulled the trigger on that, so I'm excited for that. And that leads to the next thing I want to say, which is, I just wanted to thank you and Rachel and Andrew, all of you guys, because I'm relatively young. I'm 22. I'm not quite unk status yet, but you know, I'm trying to figure out the world as everybody else is. And if it wasn't for the three of you, all 90% of my unknown unknowns would have remained unknown. Like especially when it comes to theology, because I grew up in a secular household, and all I knew about theology and in particular Christianity was, what was in TV shows and movies, and school and things like that around me, which, as you know, is like the worst place to hear about any of this stuff. And if it weren't for the three of you, I literally would not have. I wouldn't have changed my life. I'd probably still be a degenerate, uneducated idiot. And so I just wanted to take a second to thank you guys for everything that you do, because like I'm sure you guys know and understand and observe this to an extent, but I don't know if you truly understand how big your impact is. I mean, there are people I meet where I have absolutely fucking nothing in common with them. I'm not into sports. I'm not into Kai Cenat or whatever the hell else people these days are into, all the normie stuff. But
What even is that?
he's this streamer. Um, he's like this huge streamer. I couldn't care less about him.
Okay.
But anyways, my sorry, I don't want to keep rambling and wasting time. But we'll find common ground in politics, and when we'll talk about politics, we'll bring up specific debates, because that was what got me into learning this stuff, was watching you and Andrew and Rachel debate people. And we'll find common ground there. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, no, Andrew Wilson, I love that guy. Jay Dyer, yeah, no, he's super smart." And it's like it, it's almost like I probably shouldn't be this way, but I do feel as though I'm gaining some fulfillment through you guys by finding people who also know who you are, and listen to you and learn from you. And so, I've been rambling for a while, but I just wanted to to make sure that you guys know that you're having an incredibly positive impact on this country and on the world, and in my life in particular. You guys have been responsible for a lot of good that has come out of it.
Well, thanks, man. I
And
appreciate that. It's kind words. I'm sorry to hear about your friend. We'll definitely pray for your buddy that he comes out of the delusion. You know, if you watch that video of the boomer guy who fell into a very similar delusion, eventually he did get shaken out of it. So there's hope for your friend. He might eventually get shaken out of it. But uh, yeah, it sounds like at a certain point it just becomes almost a demonic delusion, and that people are kind of locked into it. But Charles, what's up, man? I'm sorry to hear that. Everybody pray for that guy's buddy.
Hey Jay, thanks for letting me jump in.
Sure.
My question, I'm wondering really quickly, it'll kind of maybe shorten my question. Have you read either Tribe by Younger or The Way of Men by Jack Donovan?
I've not, but I mean, I know who Jack Donovan is, but I've not read any of his stuff. Once I heard he was a Crowleyan, I just kind of tuned out.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely went a bad way. What about Tribe by Younger?
No, I don't know what it is.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So my question is actually kind of a men's issue question since it's up on the topics. And as kind of a case example, I want to set kind of like what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan aside.
Okay.
So my question kind of has two parts. Do you think that the American man has been successfully like atomized in such a way that we've not only lost like a sense of tribe, but that when you think of something like what's going on in your locality, like a Dearborn, Michigan, that men no longer know how to sort of function and band together in order to address something like that with what might otherwise be called kind of like an old world solution. Because
Yeah,
I
I
think
think,
that,
yeah, if
yeah,
you
go
watch
ahead.
Father Moses, he talks about this kind of stuff too, where we've had our normal male rituals and normal male camaraderie taken away by design. So I think absolutely.
Yeah. So then, second part of my question, I guess, is like thinking about what the previous gentleman was just saying about how AI is really just affecting sort of the psyche of men. And the reason why I brought up Jack Donovan because he talks about in his book the rise of the simulated life and the empires of nothing were kind of his terms. And so I think that like as being image bearers of God, we are created to live face to face with each other. And
Right.
the more that we give our strength to the simulated life, we just remain sort of isolated and atomized. And so, what
Absolutely.
would you think? What do you think is like? What's like ripping off the band-aid, the way back for like a situation like Dearborn? Because it's not going to stay there.
I'm
It's
trying to
coming
think.
for New
Yeah,
York.
I know it's
Yeah.
coming for everywhere. I mean, I'm thinking that maybe, I mean, this is just a thought I had, like not even using AI at all, because number one, it's not very good. Like, I don't really understand why it's so relied upon because when I ask it like the same questions 5 minutes apart, I get different answers. So it seems to be pretty shitty to me. I mean, sometimes it's okay, right? Like sometimes Grok will give you a good response or a summary or something. Like it's good at like summarizing something really long, but that's about it. And it seemed like Grok 1 was good with like geopolitical, CIA, even Israeli history issues. And it seems like it's a little more cucked now. It doesn't seem that great. So it's like it's all become normified by design, I'm sure. But I don't know, maybe we should just like not look, I'll put it this way, like, when I see the people, like, the young people, Gen Z people and younger that rely on AI, they're completely stupid. They have no idea what's going on, and they'll cite it like it's, like, the Pope, right? Like, it's the decision, it's the final arbiter of all the debates and discussions. It's like, you know that the AI will tell you what you wanna hear, you idiot. Why would you rely on that for your theological, historical questions? It's just so insane. So maybe it's actually you're better off not using AI, except in, limited circumstances. I don't know. But yeah, I think it is going to be more and more of an issue. People are going to become, it's going to be a cult. People are going to treat it like their deity. There'll be AI cults, probably already happening right now. Um, how do men formulate together? I think Gavin McInnes tried this, right? This was what the Proud Boys were supposed to be, was like men having um, men's stuff, and then inevitably what happens is that when men try to form those kind of chapters, the feds take it over and try to turn it into some radical thing, right? like they did that with the Proud Boys in New York, and a bunch of those guys ended up in jail because you just had a bunch of federal informants running the Proud Boys chapters. So I don't know what the solution is other than for people to try to form these chapters or these men's groups. We have a men's group at my church, and I think there's some good camaraderie and broing on there. So at the Orthodox Church is your only hope, probably in Rocor, because you're not going to have a healthy men's group in a Novus Ordo um, parish run by a bunch of lesbians and feminists and gay guys. Joaquin, what's up?
Yo, what's up, Jay?
What's on your mind?
Oh, I just wanted to say a couple things about that CEO dude who came on your stream yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Uh, he kept asking you about Nick and why he wouldn't want to have a debate right now. If you mind, could I maybe elaborate, share my thoughts?
Sure.
All right. Well, Nick is doing pretty well right now. He's very popular. I'm admittedly more popular than you right now, and for him to go into a debate like that, a losing debate, he wouldn't win. He's not as theologically, geopolitically eligible as you, especially Catholicism. If he was to do a debate right now, all it would do would make him look bad and give you followers. And I'm not coming here to defend him or anything. I'm a Orthodox Christian myself, big fan. I would just like to maybe elaborate because he did keep asking you, why do you think he doesn't want to have it, and just kept asking you over and over again. You
Yeah,
wouldn't
so
say.
I told that guy in DMs, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I can understand that perspective. And I let it go and admitted that that's actually a good point. And I said that I'd be happy to have just a friendly conversation. It doesn't have to be a debate. And then that guy acted like he agreed and was happy that I heard him out. And then he started clipping my responses to make me look like a retard and say stuff I wasn't saying. So I don't know why he went that route, which I thought we were having a productive conversation. And then he clipped me to as if I was saying that I would never admit that I've ever gotten anything wrong. And what I said was, why would anyone admit that they've never gotten anything wrong? And that's what I was trying to say. So they just took me out of context to make me look stupid. And it's just like, why would I interact with that CEO guy when he's gonna clip me and make me look stupid?
No, I'll admit he was trying to clip you, and I saw something he posted. Jay blocked me after DMing me or something, and I just wanted to maybe give him maybe a couple thoughts of what you could do to maybe get closer to Nick in a way. Maybe you could try
Well,
visiting
I
him.
have other people that I've been talking to that know him and have already been talking to Nick. So I said, yeah, I'd be happy to have a conversation. I don't have to have a debate. I thought that the only reason I talked about a debate was because someone said, we need you and Nick to get back together. This was like a month ago. And I said something like, I don't mind, I'll have a debate or whatever. And that got turned into, oh, Jay's posting the old debates on his clips channels because he wants to debate Nick. And I said in the comments, I would debate Nick, but I also said, and I sent Nick DMs saying, it doesn't have to be a debate. We can have a conversation. I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I think
if there's somebody else that is in contact with Nick, if Nick doesn't want to respond to me or whatever, like, yeah, that's fine. You can reach out and say that I'll have a conversation with whoever. I don't care. It doesn't have to be a debate.
this is just an idea, but I think maybe Nick thinks you're using him as maybe a tool to just try and spread orthodoxy rather than personally convert him. So maybe try visiting him or something, have a private conversation, and then
So
maybe
yeah, no, that's fair. I told Vince and I told Michael Cisco and I told Demi, the guy that was messaging Nick yesterday. I said we don't have to have a public conversation either. We can also have a private chat. It doesn't have to be. I'm not trying to get into Nick's platform. I don't need his. I'm not trying to suck off his followers or whatever. Like I'm not. That's not what I'm about, man. I don't. I don't even. I'm. If somebody is not interested, I'll move on. I'm not going to keep belaboring an issue.
no, that's fine. That's a good opinion to have. Anyways, I just wanted to say that. So thanks for letting me speak.
Yeah. Do you know? Do you know him? Do you have a pipeline to him?
Nah, I just I watch you too, and I would like to see you guys
Okay.
collaborate on something.
Yeah, I'm open to that. It doesn't have to be a confrontational thing, and it could be private too. Sure. I'm always, but I'm also like the other thing too is like I'm really accessible, so he could easily just like he was replying when he was Autumn. Remember when he came back as Autumn Groiper? Uh, yeah, like he was replying in DMs pretty consistently. I'm sure he's busy, and that's fine. I don't. I'm not mad about him not replying, but if he wants to, he can always reach out.
Sounds great.
Cool. Thank you. Mackenzie, no, we did. Mackenzie, you had a question. What's up?
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I actually have a question for you and Rachel, if that's okay.
Yeah, if she wants to.
Yeah. Um, so we see all the time recommendations or like ways that we should, this goes to the men's issues topic, on ways to like teach boys how to treat women, but we don't see anything about how girls should treat boys or like men, how young women should treat men. And so I was,
Oh, that is an interesting topic I've never heard addressed.
yeah, so I have two little kids, a boy and a girl. And I just my I mean, I'm trying to Rachel, you're kind of like one of my heroes. So I'm trying to my mom is like a boomer feminist, but like evangelical Christian. And I've noticed that like after kind of like deconstructing my beliefs that a lot of the like um sort of like trad Christian stuff is more just kind of like southern hospitality. It's not one second, Bobo. Okay. So anyways, just wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that's like one of the only reasons I'm here. Like, I wouldn't be here. I'd be gardening or baking or something. If things weren't so skewed in one direction. Yeah, and in this climate, for men to come out and say, actually, we need to start teaching women how to treat men and how to be respectful wives, they'll just get slapped with labels of misogyny. They'll just get immediately pummeled down into the ground by both feminists, crypto feminists, and then also the beta simp males and the men who have been raised, with like the single mom mindset, and they're very defensive of women, and they're going to white knight and come in and rescue the woman from the mildest of criticisms. So I would say I always tell people this because they're like, where can I find a wife like you? First of all, you don't necessarily want a wife like me. I'm great for Andrew. I might not be great for a lot of other dudes. I'm not like some example whatsoever. I'm really not. But I always say, like, I wasn't born like a good wife. I had to learn to be a good wife. It took practice, it took intention on my part to kind of look at my own behavior and be a little self critical and analyze where I was still being bratty or sassy or argumentative or giving my husband problems when there was no reason to do so. So if you have daughters who you think will kind of listen, um, it's tricky because the culture is going to tell them that you're bad and you're wrong. But if you want to try to kind of, the best thing you can do, number one, is model it. Be the kind of wife that you think that they should be. Treat your husband the way that you think you'd like your daughters to treat a good husband. Of course, this is all predicated on we're not telling women to submit to abusive men. Shouldn't have to say that, but I guess I do have to say that. But assuming you have a good, decent man for a husband, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to be fallible like we all are. So I would just say, like, if you want a husband who can lead you and be a competent guy that you can trust and rely on, who can protect you, who can do all the things that we expect men to do, then the number one rule is you don't step all over his dick, right? You can't say, I want you to lead, but I'm not going to follow, right? That doesn't work. So I would say, like, if you want a husband who's a good quality man who's capable of good leadership, you have to be capable of being a good follower. You have to be able to, at the times when you want to. I heard somebody say this, I think it was Father Josiah Trenum or Father Peter Hears, I can't remember who, but they said, when wives are addressing their husbands, if they have a disagreement or they have a problem, the best way to think about how to do that is to think of how you would approach your bishop if you were a priest. You would not, get sassy and get an attitude with him and be rude. You would say, Your Eminence, is it okay if I speak my mind on this? And he would probably say, Yes, sure, go ahead. And then with respect, you would give your thoughts, not expecting that everything must go your way. So it's kind of like we live in a world that teaches women to rage against hierarchy and patriarchy, and that they have to
Yes.
constantly be proving, I can be the boss too, I can be the leader too, I don't have to listen to you, you're trying to oppress me. So just trying to help them understand that hierarchy and patriarchy are not oppressive, abusive systems. They're there mostly for your benefit. And so, of course, find a good and virtuous man, but at that point, respect his authority if you want him to have the authority to do what he needs to do. So it's kind of more just teaching them a whole different way of looking at these things and a whole different worldview that is kind of counter to what we see in the culture and in school. That's what I'd say. Do you have anything to add to that, Jay? Or maybe
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. I think that was excellent comments. I mean, there's hardly anybody speaking to young women about proper young womanness. So I appreciate people that do. It's all directed at the guys. So
yeah, that's
I'm saying from a good. I'm not. I don't. I mean, there's plenty of retards on the internet, yelling at women and talking about 304s. But I'm talking about giving good advice to young girls. There's probably not a lot of that out there.
No, I don't think there's any, because if you try to give young women any advice other than here's what you're allowed to say to young women. You're allowed to say, you are worth it, you're a goddess, you're an angel, you're amazing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
love
exactly.
yourself, love yourself, love yourself, love yourself. We can never, and this is just, it's so detrimental to the women. It's so bad for the women that they never learn to take any sort of criticism. They never learn to look at themselves and their behavior and say, where might I
Yeah,
be going wrong? And how could this be sabotaging my own life and my own happiness? It's not just about pleasing men. It's just a simple fact of being a human being in the world, that if you go through it thinking you're a goddess and a queen and you're perfect and you're above criticism, you're going to have a bad life. That's not good for women. And it's we look at how they behave and we're like, I can't believe they behave that way. And I'm always like, why wouldn't they behave that way? they're told they're perfect and above criticism and that everyone else needs to change, never them. So just teaching them, that kind of thing, and to think about it differently, to think about it as, hey, you're not the queen of the universe, you're not above criticism. You're a fallible human like everyone else who has to work on themselves. And I mean, the Orthodox worldview should teach that in and of itself. But
yeah. Jamie had a chapter in her book, Princess Programming, because little girls are programmed to be like princesses and treated like goddesses, and then the guys are given the programming that they need to go die for the state. Nanners, what's up? Thank you,
yep,
Rachel. That's really
thanks.
good. Nanners, what's up?
Hi. So I was interested in the conversation earlier about how Israel is or is not providential. I was reading this chapter from Deuteronomy earlier, Deuteronomy 30. I'll just read a little bit of it now so you can have context. It says, when all these blessings and curses I have set before you come on you, and you take them to heart wherever the Lord our God disperses you among the nations, and when you are and when you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey him with all your heart and with all your soul according to everything I command you today, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you and gather you again from all the nations where he scattered you. That seems like it's very resonant with the modern state of Israel. Um, and I'm just curious what you think about it.
All of those statements are applied by Jesus in Revelation 2 and 3 to the church. So the covenant blessings and cursings is now transferred to the spiritual Israel, the true Israel of Galatians 3:4 and Galatians 6:16, the church. So no, the covenant cursings and blessings of Deuteronomy are not the nation state of Israel, which is a secular socialist institution.
Well, I was more pointing toward the gathering you among the nations and gathering you. Is that not resonant to you?
No, so 1948 recognition of Israel was by the United Nations, and the gathering together, the fulfillment of that, it happened in the first century when God gathered the nations together, and you had Pentecost. That's the new Israel, the founding of the new Israel, and that's the fulfillment of that passage in Deuteronomy. Although I appreciate your statement. Il Jukas, what's up? And we'll call it last couple of questions here, and then we'll call it a day. Ortho Boxer, what's up? Il Jukas, on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So the question that I struggle with is regarding the history of the Russian Orthodox Church, and I'm sure you're familiar with the old believers, right?
I mean, I know some of the history of the old believers. I'm not an expert on this. Sneck knows a lot more about it than I do.
But basically, it's like the thing that there was whole premise of changing the tradition, not like the dogmas, right? But
I know the story of it, but what about it? What's the question?
the question to me to you is that why does the Russian Orthodox Church they still believe that these guys they still have full communion with God, etc. However, they tell that they fell from the church. So what kind of position is this? I don't kind of see.
Okay, there's different groups of old believers. Some of them have been reconciled, and some of them have not. So it's an oversimplified question. Orthodox Boxer, what's up?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you mind if I go off topic and speak a bit about Nick Fuentes? I was talking to a lot of Groypers, ex-Groypers yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. So this is just something that I spoke a lot, right, with Groypers yesterday, ex-former Groypers. So I compiled a bunch of their stuff. So I'll just like to read this to you. I had like a bunch of their comments. So like
Is it really long, or is
honestly,
it
it's not
how
long.
long is it going?
Honestly, it's not long.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So on the Dave Smith podcast, Nick said that if a Democrat wins in 2029, he's going to move to another country because whoever comes into power from the left is going to want blood. And he also highlighted like the Trump administration, like deliberately manufacturing a state of tension and etc. So how is it that Nick wants people or his groypers to infiltrate, say, like Yale and these institutions, yet with Groyper money, he's able to flee the country if the left comes. And at the same time, he said that he'll do everything in his power to campaign against JD Vance in his, I think it was in the Gavin McInnes debate. So isn't that like a bit, I don't know, contradictive?
So he's, in other words, implying that he might try to run for political office. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean like so he's saying like the left is really dangerous if the left gets in power in
No,
2029.
I got all
Yeah.
that. I got
Yeah.
all that, but I'm saying when he says campaign against Vance, does he mean running against Vance, or does he just mean that
Groyper
opposing
war, no.
Vance through like?
Groyper war, yeah.
Oh,
Like just the way he campaigned against Trump and telling Groypers not to vote for Trump, he's gonna do that for Vance. But how are you gonna say that? And then at the same time you're about to flee the US if Vance's enemies win. That's what I mean.
well, maybe he just sees it as like he's gonna oppose Vance, and then if Vance loses, he'll just run to another country. Is that what he means?
Yeah, that's what I think he means, but if that's actually what he means, isn't that a bit disloyal? Like, how is he telling his groypers, you stay in America, you infiltrate the positions, but if the left wins, he's gonna run, and it's gonna be more difficult for his groypers to infiltrate the very
Yeah.
institutions.
Yeah, I don't know how he would reply to that. It could be maybe he thinks that if the infiltration is unsuccessful, then it would be beneficial to flee I don't know.
All right, and just a very quick second question, and it's just regarding about Islam and Christianity.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. So in Matthew 4:1 to 11, that the temptation of Christ, Satan failed to tempt Christ, and it's there. And like in Matthew, I think it was verses 5 to 7, you could see Satan tried to misquote Psalm 91. So this is proof that Satan can quote scripture. However, at the end of the day, Christ was not tempted and rejected Satan's offer. I've seen in a lot of hadiths, Muhammad actually says that his name will be the most praised, it will be the most exalted. And one of the hadiths in one of the battles he's in, he suddenly starts saying, God is great, I've been given the keys to Yemen. God is great, I've been given the keys to Syria and Persia and etc. And almost I think 100 years later, the Muslims go on to conquering both Persia and Rome. So my question is there any way you think, because you said that Islam is satanic, that Satan actually gave a similar or the exact same offer to Muhammad that Christ didn't take?
That's an interesting thesis. I've never even thought about that. It does seem to be the opposite of the temptations, doesn't it? Um, yeah, it's very plausible. And whether he actually presented that temptation to Muhammad or not, it's still basically the same satanic motivation. So absolutely, great points. Common sensible. What's up?
Hey, what's up? I just have a question, if that's okay, Jay.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's a Christian question more so on the aspect of neutrality and stuff like that. I've seen a lot of Protestant churches pop up more and more, and I'm sure some of it has to do with feminization and everything else like that. Of this aspect of like, well, you have to respect the person and their agency all the time and stuff. And I've seen a lot of priests, bishops, and other people that have taken these approaches towards neutrality where they attempt to proclaim that they are neutral, but in doing so, they are making a stance, and that itself is an action. And in many ways, it seems that it's just
Neutral on
passivity.
what? Like what are you talking about neutral?
Um,
Neutral on what? Politics or what?
not politics as much, more like towards sin. So like things like adultery, things like lying, things like false witness, like whatever else it might be.
Well, there's no. I mean, that's called a sin of omission.
Right.
So there's no such thing as neutrality in that sense because you're contributing to. It's like if you know that your neighbor is killing people and you're like, oh well, I'm just neutral on it, even though I know it. No, you would actually be complicit.
Right. So with clergy, right? How would in orthodoxy, right? How would clergy be expected to act if like somebody's like I know the murdering one was kind of an extreme, but let's say that like in a sense somebody's lying to you, right? Like the person's lying to the priest, and then it comes out that they've lied to the priest or whatever else it is, and then they still do nothing
Do you mean in confession or just in
outside of
life in
confession.
general? Outside of confession. Well, I mean, depending upon the severity of the issue, like you would be banned from communion, and eventually, if again, depending upon the severity of the issue, you would be potentially excommunicated.
Right. So there would be some sort of discipline, right? Some sort of action, some sort of
I mean,
confrontation.
they're supposed to be, but I mean, sometimes Orthodox clergy are definitely negligent, and they can be corrupt as well.
Yeah, this isn't so much about orthodoxy itself, but more just a broader Christian question. Because I've seen in my time at least, within my life, I've seen a lot of Protestants and lots of others who have really taken these passivity type
Yeah,
approaches,
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
avoiding.
no, that would be a sin of omission. Like it would be you're complicit, right? I mean, you're maybe not as guilty as the person doing it, but you are participating in another person's evil actions by not opposing or not stopping the evil. What's up, William? Last one, William. Unmute. What's up, dude? William, you're the last guy if you want to say anything. William Santos, unmute. Since William couldn't get on, last question for anybody who's not come up, hit request to speak, and you'll be the last guy today. Great conversations today, guys. I appreciate it. A lot of great practical advice, a lot of good geopolitical stuff, a lot of good stuff on AI and virtue. So it was I think a quality one. Revolt, what's up, man? Good. How are you?
Getting into your stuff. So now I know you have an opinion about Hitler and how he's a construct of, I call it high finance. I suppose you have a different definition. Do you know of Smedley Butler by chance?
Yeah, war is a racket. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So I've come to my conclusions just like you have through a different path. You have a picture online. It's a book. What book is that?
Tragedy and Hope.
Okay, I could find that online, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a should be PDFs pretty accessible. It's from Dr. Carol Quigley, who was a Fabian socialist capitalist third way proponent. He was the mentor to Bill Clinton, and he wrote a giant geopolitical analysis of the 20th century from the CFR archives.
Okay,
So it's a book that's very valuable for getting establishment admissions. So a lot of people mistakenly think that when I post the book, I'm pro Quigley. No, he's a piece of shit, but he's good for showing what the elite thought and think about the 20th century.
that's right. Okay, perfect. I appreciate that. Have you read the book Plot to Seize the White House by chance?
I have not, but another book that goes along with this is Anthony Sutton's series about Wall Street funding the Bolsheviks and Hitler.
Excellent. I like this. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, great questions. Yeah. By the way, if people are interested, I have an entire lecture series going all the way through all 1,300 pages of Tragedy Hope, as well as books, as well as lectures on Sutton's funding of the Bolsheviks, and that was Rockefeller and Jewish banking elites, Warburgs and the Schiffs putting money into the Bolshevik Revolution. Ultra, what's up? Oh, the other reason why I didn't say just high finance is that I don't think Hitler was funded just by finance. I think he was also aided by industrialists in the West and Germany. Ultra, what's up?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So I was just wondering if you had any book recommendations on ethnophilicism or race and ethnicity inside of the Orthodox worldview.
I don't know about inside the Orthodox view. I've read a lot of books just from outside the Orthodox worldview. I mean, I think the closest thing I could think to something like that would be like Francis Parker Yaki's book Imperium, which I do think is an interesting, fascinating read. It's about a 700-page book. I read that back in my 20s. That would probably be the closest thing to some sort of like an imperial idea of how these things could be structured. And that's probably like what you're looking for. But I don't know about specifically ethno-nationalism in the Orthodox Church. I think ethnophilitism obviously is condemned in the terms of the patriarchal discussions and the patriarchal synod from 100 years ago or whatever. But that's not the same thing as having a Christian nation state and having a homogenous people group and not having crazy open borders. Anon, what's up? Last guy. Anon and then Gabriel.
What's up, Jay? I had a question about
Yeah.
the old calendarists. What do you think about them? Because I couldn't find any video from you about them. So
I mean, there's different old calendars. Rokor is on the old calendar. So, do you mean the schismatic groups? Obviously, I'm
yeah,
not into schismatic.
I mean the schismatic group.
Okay, well, I'm not into schismatic groups. So that's my take on it. Gabriel, what's up?
Hello, thank you. I saw your posts on X about looking for someone to back you or be the second debater against Tiny Mustache Man. What do you think about Brother Augustine, who wrote "Fascism Viewed from the Cross"?
No, I'll never interact with that dude. So absolutely not. But by the way, I don't know that Jake Shields even wants to do that debate now. So ironically, Jake Shields said he was all about it at first. He's like, "Yeah, let's set this up." And then the more he asked me about my views, he was like, "Oh, I should just interview you because I don't know enough about the history of World War II and finance to debate it." And I was like, "Well, I'll debate, if you have a buddy or something." So I don't know if he even wants to do a debate anymore because he's sort of shifted in the DMs about what exactly he wants to do. But I'm continuing to push for some kind of debate, so maybe he will. We'll see. Anyway, great chat today, guys. Appreciate it. We'll be doing more of these. Like I said, I know that the Discord has kind of been on its own, running on its own without me. But I'm thinking we'll go to H. Brazzi, last guy. I'm thinking of reviving the Discord because so many people are asking for a lot of Orthodox questions. How do I become Orthodox? What do I do? I'm interested in this. And I did a test run yesterday with that tweet, and we had there's almost 1,000 people in the comments saying that yes, debates, yes, these questions and topics, Q&As have helped me convert. So I guess there is a responsibility there to continue doing it. I don't really want to be that kind of a guy. I don't really see myself as that. And I'm certainly not a spiritual guru or an advisor, but I also think I have a lot better advice than a lot of the guys out here. So maybe I should continue to kind of do the Discord a little more. I haven't done that in the last 3 or 4 years, but H. Brosy, what's up?
Hey, I'm glad the Jake Shields thing got brought up because I didn't see until this morning that that he even responded to you or addressed it at all. And when I saw his follow up post that it kind of seemed like not necessarily he was backing out, but that maybe y'all just have like I think his exact words were like small differences or like on what exactly happened. The only thing that came to mind is like just like the guy yesterday that called in and asked like what are your views on the Holocaust. I'm thinking Jake, and maybe you're right on your assessment of why he changed his mind. What I thought initially was he thinks you're um, that maybe you're like some form of pro-Zionist or whatever, and that's why he wanted to have the debate.
No, he did.
Exactly.
He asked me all that in the DMs. He was like, "Oh, are you a Jewish
Yeah.
Zionist?" I'm
See,
like, "No."
that's what I'm saying. Like,
What?
just like the guy that called in yesterday, they get caught up in false dialectics so fucking quickly because they just feel like the world is against them. So that guy that called in and asked about, your view on that had nothing to like. What the fuck does that have anything to do with what was being discussed yesterday? He was maybe he was being genuine. It's never been the case that somebody that asked that question, and like in this context, is being genuine about it. He just wants to hear you say, yeah, 6 million were killed. Like,
Yeah, I figured he would have like a buddy that was like a neo Volkish kind of dude or somebody that's into like the pagan stuff. There's a couple profiles on Twitter that are like super
yeah,
pagan, Wotan type dudes that love World War II history. And there was one of these guys. I asked him questions. I was like, he's like, "Oh, I could easily refute Dyer," and I'm like, "Okay, would you want to have a discussion?" And you want, no, fuck you. There's another guy who's all into it, who's a pretty well known podcaster guy. I DM'd him. I was like, "Hey, you want to have a discussion on this World War II stuff and Quigley?" And he's like, "Fuck off."
yeah,
So no, I don't think a lot of these people are not it. And I think that speaks to what the guys who came on earlier said, is that a lot of the people into like the Nietzschean ethos, they don't actually value debate.
yeah,
They see that as Socratic, and Nietzsche hated Socrates and this idea of pursuing truth because it's all power relations anyway, and who gives a shit about
yeah.
truth? So I think that's the reason that they don't really care about debating.
There's one of those guys. I don't know his name off the top. If I saw his profile picture, I'll know it's him. And he was one of the guys that when I went into that white nationalist space like a month ago. At this point, he was like he was the main one talking. He seemed to be like the most probably the most educated out of everybody in there. He like I know I saw him say something about him being willing to have a discussion with you. He said he's called in before and based on the interaction I had with him that night, when he said something about being kicked immediately, like in something I saw like last week. So I'm what I'm thinking happened is he called in while you were on YouTube, immediately said something that wasn't safe for it, and he got booted. Because what he said was that all he does is boot people, immediately, whatever. But yeah.
Well, do you know what the
No,
guy's
like
name
that's what I'm
was?
saying. If I see him, I'll like get his name and I'll DM it to you or whatever.
Yeah, just DM me and we can have
Yeah,
another
because
conversation on that or something.
his views on Christian, all of them, every single last one of them. This is the problem with all of these guys. you can't talk to them about Christianity. It's so fucking low tier. It is ridiculous. Like they all start with that whole, well, Jesus was a Jew. Like, oh, come on, like we can't interact with them like on Christianity. So it's gonna have to be something like World War II or Hitler or whatever else. Because if it has anything to do with theism, maybe not necessarily rabbinic theology. Some of them seem to be, pretty good on the Talmud and on rabbinic theology, whatever. But as far as Christianity, they immediately just pivot to the Reddit tier shit. I mean, like, so yeah, well, I guess we're gonna have to avoid that. But
Yeah, and a lot of them do that because most of what is so-called Christianity is a bunch of just absolutely gay, just trash. So that's why they do that. But anyway, thank you guys. A lot of fun today. Great conversations, great chat. And we're gonna have more spaces. We're gonna have more Discord Q&As. And I know that when I go in the Discord Q&A, it's just going to be all catechumen questions, but I guess I need to step up to the plate and just do it. Everybody have a good night.